Transjordan, as it was called at the time, attacked from the east. And from the south, the Egyptians attacked. And the idea was to kill the newborn Jewish state at birth. And if young people then, as people now, didn't fight to defend this country would not exist. You know, I walk around this country, and the reality is every square meter that you see, every square yard you see, someone had to pay the price that would be part of Israel. And, you know, since Memorial Day last year, we lost 174 people in Gaza, in Lebanon, in other places. It's been a difficult year. But if that is the price that we are paying for our freedom, for our independence, for our security, for our sovereignty, that's a price that unfortunately is necessary. And I think you see today in Israel the appreciation we all have for those who fell in battle, those who fell protecting us as a country, who fell defending the state of Israel. They have our respect. Their families have our respect. We are united as one in Israel today.
All right, well said. And unfortunately, Israel still today dealing with threats to its very existence. Let's talk about the preeminent one, Iran. Mark, and President Trump said no one is playing games here. It certainly looks like the Iranians are playing games. As I'm speaking to you, I'm not really sure, and I'm not sure anyone knows for sure whether there's going to be the negotiations are going to resume today in Islamabad, or who is going to exactly be there. I mean, as a veteran diplomat, as someone who's been involved in high-level talks, I have to start by asking you, is this a way to run a negotiation?
This is the way the Iranians run negotiations, Caleb. Because what they do is they say, we're not coming unless you do A, B, and C. We put conditions. And they finally show up, of course, because they have to. But by showing up, they say that's already a concession because we didn't want to be here, right? That's the way they negotiate. And then can you expect from them more concessions after they've made such a huge, in inverted commas, concession by showing up? Yes, that's the way the Iranians have long played the game. It was the same in the previous round. What was it? Just 2 weeks ago, the previous round of negotiations in Pakistan. It's the same today. I'm sure they'll show up. What I'm glad to see is the current American president is a very astute negotiator. And when they started saying things like, oh, we're not sure we're going to turn up, the American president immediately said, don't turn up. It doesn't worry me. You'll face the consequences of not turning up. In other words, they thought they had leverage, and he took the leverage away from them. And I like to see that. That's good. That's good diplomacy from the American perspective.
Let's talk about the specifics, though, now of what is being negotiated. I mean, there has been, for example, talk about unconfirmed reports, I'd say, for example, transferring some of that enriched material to Pakistan, an idea that had never been floated before. It looks like Pakistan is playing a sort of increased role. I'm not sure that's to the necessarily, for example, for the benefit of Israel. There's been talk now about it was originally a 10, 20 year, no enrichment forever, then 20 years. Now there's talking about whittling it down to somewhere between 10 and 15 years. How concerned should Jerusalem be about perhaps the direction in the way, and again, this all could change at any moment, but in some of the ideas that are being floated here?
So President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu always stress that the most important issue is the issue of the Iranian nuclear program, okay? There are other issues that are important. There's the issue of the proxies and the issue of the ballistic missiles. But the key one is the nuclear issue. And it's right, you have to prioritize what's crucially important in any negotiating process, because you might not get everything you want. So it's crucial to focus on the most important issue, and that's the Iranian nuclear program. And two things have to happen. The currently highly enriched uranium, which is in Iran, they say some 400 kilos, that has to be taken out of Iran. Now, it's correct when you say that this is new, that it'd be taken to Pakistan, but the idea that this enriched uranium should be removed from Iran, that's been on the table for years. People used to talk about taking it to Russia, and I think that's more agreeable to Israel than having it taken to Pakistan. I'm not sure India would be too happy either that this highly enriched military-grade uranium would end up in Pakistan, though, of course, the Pakistanis already have a nuclear weapon, but why would you want to contribute to their nuclear arsenal? So the idea has to be that the enriched uranium already in Iran has to be removed from Iran to a third country. And secondly, you have to deny them, to take away their ability to further enrich uranium. That means you have to deal with the centrifuges. You have to deal with their issue, with their ability to enrich. Now, up until now, the Iranians have said, oh, we have a sacred right of enrichment. No, you don't. There's no such right under international law. I actually heard the head of the IAEA say that very publicly. He said very publicly, there's no right in international law for every country to enrich. The Iranians have no right. Their behavior over the last decades has shown that they are dangerous when they have that sort of ability to enrich uranium. And so they're the two things that have to be accomplished in the negotiations. The highly enriched uranium already in Iran has to be taken out to a third country, and their ability to enrich more has to be taken away. Their capabilities to enrich those centrifuges have to be dismantled.
Right. Let's move to the other fragile ceasefire instead of negotiations going on Lebanon. Word coming out that next meeting between Ambassador Leiter and the Lebanese envoy to the U.S. might take place this Thursday. But Israel has put out its positions. Its positions are known. Hamas must disarm. And given what is happening in South Lebanon, it seems like there are incidents almost every day. What actually can be gained more for Israel by having these talks in Washington with the Lebanese ambassador?
So you're right that there's something very surrealistic about these talks going on between Israel and Lebanon. Because while I really appreciate the change of demeanor amongst the Lebanese government, the fact they're talking about a peace agreement with Israel, about normalizing ties with Israel, about a breakthrough with Israel, and they're talking about dismantling Hezbollah and the threat it poses to both Israel and to the people of Lebanon. The fact is, the government of Lebanon is unfortunately very weak. And they took a decision, what was it, a month ago to eject, to expel the ambassador of Iran, and even that they haven't been able to do. And so while Israel will engage with Lebanon and wants to engage with Lebanon and wants to move forward with Lebanon, the elephant, in the room is Hezbollah. And if the government of Lebanon is so far incapable of dealing with the threat Hezbollah poses, that means it falls upon Israel to do so. And that's why Israel is staying in South Lebanon until Hezbollah is no longer a threat. That can be leverage to help get a deal. And what I would hope is that as Israel continues to act to degrade the Hezbollah military machine, from a relative point of view, that means the government of Lebanon is more powerful, because as Hezbollah becomes weaker, they become more powerful relatively, and maybe that will open the opportunity for the government of Lebanon actually to follow through on some of its statements and actually act to disarm Hezbollah.
All right. And finally, just a brief word, Mark, about the Gaza. We heard Nikolai Mladenov, the special envoy there, seems to be running very parallel to the same situation in Lebanon. There is a plan to move forward, but it's all depending on a terror group to disarm. And it seems at the end of the day, no one is willing to really take that job on, and then we'll fall on Israel again.
I think that's quite possible. At least the representative, Nikolai, said all the right things. Yes, he said Hamas has to disarm. That's a UN Security Council resolution. That's the position of the international community. Hamas should not have weapons, right? That's the bottom line. And the truth is, will they voluntarily disarm? It looks like not. In fact, they're probably using the current relative quiet in Gaza to strengthen their military machine all over again. So I think it's crucial we keep our eye on the ball. Obviously, we've got bigger fish to fry today. We're focused on Iran and we're focused on Lebanon. And Gaza's sort of in the back seat. The good news is, if we get it right in Lebanon and we get it right in Iran, that will directly affect the destiny of Hamas in Gaza, because their ability to pose a threat to Israel will be limited if they're cut off from the cord of support they used to receive both from Iran and from Hezbollah. So I think it's right to put the issue of Gaza on the low burner at this stage, focus on Iran, focus on Lebanon. If we get good solutions on those issues, I think that'll help us get Gaza right too.
All right, Ambassador Mark Regev, thank you for joining us today in Israel Memorial Day on ILTV. And as we reported earlier, President Javier Milei of Argentina, visiting Israel this week, is going to have a rare honor tonight, being one of the official torchlighters in the Israel Independence Day. Let's go to Ilan Lipskind. He is the coordinator of international relations with Latin America for the Likud party. Ilan, very rare for a foreign leader to be chosen as a torchlighter on Israel Independence Day. How deserving is President Milei of this honor? In fact, I can't even recall of another example of this.
Yeah, President Milei is the first leader since 1949, the first foreign leader to act and to have the honor to do this in the ceremony of this year of Yom Ha'atzmaut. This has been an historic week. It's the third visit of President Milei here in Israel. And he's not only a great ally of Israel, he's a true friend. And you don't start a state visit going to the coattail unless your commitment is spiritual and not just political. And President Milei did that.
Right. Now, President Milei certainly brought a radical change in Argentina's policy towards Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Milei signing a new agreement. They're calling it the Isaac Accords to get countries to move their embassies to Jerusalem, with a particular focus, it seems, on South America and Central America or Latin American countries. How likely is it we're going to see more countries? Is President Milei part of a trend, maybe a changing political trend or diplomatic trend in Latin America towards Israel?
Yeah, President Milei is the protagonist leader on this Isaac Accord. Also, Prime Minister Netanyahu said he has a great hope other Latin American countries join this important accord. And President Milei is the leader of the region and the great ally of Israel, who his commitment is to, again, be close with Western values, and especially with Israel.
Representative is he of, for example, the peoples of Latin America, especially, for example, we hear talk about growing evangelical communities in certain countries that are changing attitudes toward Israel. This is especially noticeable. For example, I believe in Honduras, they were a key factor there. So where does he stand? How representative is President Milei of just the sort of the general population's attitudes in Argentina or Latin America towards Israel?
Yeah, we can see it also in the last elections we have in these last years in some of the Latin American countries. We also know that, for example, President of Paraguay, Santiago Peña, he's a great ally of Israel. Also, we can see it with President-elected Cast in Chile, that Chile, they had a population that it's more likely to be on the side of the Palestinian in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And we saw that President Cast, who is, he said he's a great ally of Israel, he won the elections. So we see in Latin America, for the first time in decades, not only the leaders who are supporting Israel, also the people who are the electors and who have the power in their hand to choose the presidents and the leaders of their countries. And they are winning. They are winning the elections. We have next month in May elections in Colombia. So we hope that the people of Colombia choose a great ally of Israel and a right-wing government, same as President Milei, same as Santiago Peña. So we hope.
Right. I should note in Chile you referenced the fact there specifically. We should note there was actually quite a large Palestinian community in Chile of Palestinians themselves there. I'm going to add one more country because we don't know what's going to happen there, but Venezuela, where there has been a change of government, wasn't elected. And a lot of discussion about it, but certainly with Nicolas Maduro out of office and in an American prison, who knows, we might see a change in Venezuela as well in the future. Ilan Lipskin, thank you for joining us here on ILTV.
Thank you very much.
Now we're going to take out for a special message from the University of Haifa.
The University of Haifa stands at the forefront of global impact, ranking #1 in Israel, and has been ranked among the top 100 universities worldwide for sustainability. Here, environmental responsibility, social justice, and academic research come together to build a better future.
U Haifa International also has adopted the sustainability perspective, where we take part also in high-impact work that is informed by academic research to ensure that we have a better world to live in.
From marine research in the Mediterranean to community-focused programs shaping peace and equality, students engage directly with the issues that matter.
It's not just a degree, it's an experience, and it opens your mind, your network, and your world.
Study where innovation meets purpose on a campus committed to progress, diversity, and global citizenship. Master your mind, live your Israel experience. Shape a sustainable future at U Haifa International.
Great place to study there. I just want to express, of course, all our sympathies here at ILTV for all of those who are observing this Israel Memorial Day in remembrance of their loved ones who have either fallen in battle or been victims of terror. And, of course, wish all of our viewers a happy Independence Day that is coming in, as I mentioned before, at 8 p.m. this evening, Israel's 78th Day of Independence. And that ends this edition of ILTV. Stay tuned. Keep with us for our special coverage. I'm Kalev Ben David. Thank you for joining us.
And joining us now with more on the ongoing U.S. naval blockade of Iran is retired Navy Admiral James Thogo Dean at the Center for Maritime Strategy. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be with ILTV today. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Operation Epic Fury has had some remarkable achievements, especially by the air, but no less by the U.S. Navy. We've seen the use of the Navy in this war in a way that, at least here in Israel, we haven't seen in a very long time. What can you tell us about the use of the Navy as a method of warfare in this operation?
Well, Epic Fury has clearly engaged a preponderance of U.S. naval forces, both deployed and those in reserve. And we have brought additional carrier strike groups into the theater, either the Red Sea, the eastern side of the Mediterranean, or down in the approaches to the Gulf. And that just goes to show the value of nuclear power and the ability to move 100,000-ton ships extremely quickly throughout the theater or swing from one theater to another. Additionally, we've got expeditionary strike groups, which is a Marine expeditionary unit, about 2,200 Marines on 3 sets of ships per expeditionary strike group with additional aircraft, the F-35B, and lots of capability, counter-drone capability, self-defense capability, and other helicopters and V-22s that can participate in amphibious landings if necessary. So there's a lot of Navy force out there, and I'm very happy to see that the Navy is leading this campaign and the Navy is leading this blockade. And quite frankly, I think the blockade was a brilliant stroke at this point, since Iran depends on the Strait of Hormuz to export about 90% of its oil, but not just that, goods and services going in and out of the country. So it puts the pressure on the Iranian government and the Iranian leadership to get back to the negotiating table.
That actually leads to my next question, which, President Trump has said that the Islamic regime in Iran has really extorted the world through the Strait of Hormuz, and now the U.S. has sort of turned the tables, blockading the Iranian ports while saying that it is ensuring freedom of navigation. So, you said this is a brilliant strategy. Can you perhaps expand on that a little bit and talk also about the impact of this on Iran?
Certainly. Well, first of all, the Strait of Hormuz is an international strait. So it is nobody's strait. Nobody owns it. Everybody has access to it under the UN Convention on Law of the Sea. So I find it outrageous that the government of Iran would try to control the strait and control traffic. Furthermore, somebody asked me the other day on a news program, well, what is a blockade? Technically speaking, a blockade is an act of war. It's something that the United States Navy has done throughout its history for hundreds of years. The blockade of the Barbary pirates in North Africa, for example, in the very beginnings of our Navy. The blockade of the South during the American Civil War, tragic as it may have been, but the Union Navy blockaded the southern ports and would not allow guns or butter, foodstuffs, supplies, uniforms to get in there. And it frankly was a cost-imposing strategy that broke the back of the Confederacy and ultimately ended the war. And so we know how to do these things. Iran made a calculated decision to try to restrict access, and also it's illegal to charge a $2 million toll and operate the strait like a toll booth for each of the ships going through there. Now, let me put that in perspective for you. So there's about 100 ships that pass through the strait on any given day. And at $2 million a pop for a toll, if you multiply the ships and 365 days a year, if I did my math correctly, that's a take or a profit for Iran of $73 billion in 1 year. General Petraeus made a comment the other day that there's a fudge factor there, and with all the other goods and services, that number is really $90 billion in profit. So somewhere between 73, 75, and 90 billion going into the Iranian economy. That's more than the United States government allocated for the ship construction budget, for the defense budget. So that gives the Iranians the opportunity to rebuild and reconstitute those threats that we just spent the last month eliminating. So that would be air defense artillery, a Navy which rests on the bottom of Davy Jones' locker, as Americans will say, in the bottom of the sea, and other war materials that can be used against Israel, against our allies and partners, or against the United States itself. And the Iranians have proven that they have used missiles and other tools and mines now to restrict or attack the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. And I believe that was a big strategic mistake on their part, because now the GCC has no sympathy for Iran. Everybody is rallying to try to stop this war and to try to prevent Iran from reconstitution. So we can't allow them to charge a toll. We can't allow them to rearm and rebuild. We need to compel them to get back to the negotiating table, and that's what the blockade is all about.
So the U.S. Navy doing remarkable work. Admiral James Thogo, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Well, joining us now to help us break down this rapidly changing situation in the Middle East is the former National Security Council Senior Director under President George W. Bush and Managing Director at Beacon Global Strategies, Michael Allen. Michael, thank you so much for joining the broadcast today. I want to ask you, at this point in the war, what is President Trump trying to accomplish? Because, as you know, many of his messages seem unclear to many or even contradictory at times.
Well, I think now he is trying to negate the leverage that Iran had by threatening to blow up commercial tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. This is exactly where we ought to be focused. This would have been really dangerous if we had somehow ended this conflict with Iran feeling like they could dictate to the world how many ships got through, that they were able to do a toll booth. And so that was the worst of all worlds. And he's moving now towards reopening the straits. More ships are getting through, not enough yet. But I think this has been his primary focus. And this, I think, eventually, by blockading the Iranian ports, may put the heat on them to want to come to the table and make more substantive concessions.
Now, we saw yesterday the Mossad chief David Barnea speaking about how the war in Iran isn't over until the Islamic Republic falls. Are we seeing a divergence between U.S. goals and Israeli objectives here, or is he speaking more long-term vision of the Middle East, do you think?
Well, I do think at some point there is a divergence. I think the United States would love to see the regime collapse. I think people have reluctantly made the conclusion that it's not something that's going to happen automatically. I think we hope that we'll look back on this campaign and once the regime collapses and say this was an important milestone. But, I think Trump is trying to move to a new situation where we have a completely degraded Iran. Their nuclear program has taken big hits. Obviously, their military has. The Strait is reopened, and Iran wants to do a deal. So, at some point we diverge, although we both have the same ultimate goal.
The media has claimed that the Islamic Republic was offered a 20-year freeze on any uranium enrichment by the United States. Is that something you think could actually rein in the regime, or even 20 years is simply giving them a temporary survival lifeline to continue their work towards a weapon later on?
Yeah, I think it would give them a lifeline. 20 years is a long time, but still. And by the way, that sounds a lot like the Obama-era JCPOA that tried to put time limits on things. And I think once the president focused on it when J.D. Vance came back, he rightfully yesterday sort of disavowed the 20 years and said he wasn't interested in it. That's not to say it couldn't be resuscitated. There are reports, of course, that we may have a second round of negotiations sometime soon. I expect the ceasefire to be extended. So the issue is probably not over yet, but I'm not expecting it.
Now, is it possible to make a deal with this regime which actually meets all the demands of the United States?
Not as our demands exist today. We obviously want them to abandon support for terrorism. Their ballistic missile program should be severely cut back. We want them to turn over their highly enriched uranium. I'm still of the view that the maximum that Iran can give does not meet the minimum that the United States can accept. So I'm glad they're going to run a few plays. They're going to try to get some sort of arrangement. I think Trump will try to be creative, but at the end of the day, if pressed, I see a de facto indirect ceasefire persisting, but I don't see really a huge deal coming anytime soon.
All right. Well, we'll continue to follow that closely. I want to thank you for your time today, Michael Allen.
Thank you.
After weeks of tensions between Israel and Iran and Lebanon, Israelis are once again grappling with the impact of war. One counseling center in Beamesh is working quietly to restore hope and resilience. ILTV's Mayan Hoffman has more.
In the heart of Beamesh in central Israel, the Emunat Rachel Family Counseling Center opens its doors each day to individuals and families carrying invisible wounds. One of 11 World Emunah therapy centers across Israel, the Beamesh branch sees around 110 individuals and families every week. Its 20 therapists offer talk therapy, art therapy, play therapy, family counseling, and EMDR trauma treatment, often at a fraction of the cost charged privately. Director Nancy Chernovsky, who has led the center for more than 2 decades, says the goal is simple: to restore strength where it has been shaken.
We try to help people reconnect with their resilience, with their inner strength.
Beit Shemesh is one of Israel's most diverse cities, home to veteran Israelis, new immigrants, ultra-Orthodox and modern Orthodox families. The center serves them all, ensuring no one is turned away because of financial hardship. Single parents pay reduced fees, and many women rebuilding their lives after abusive marriages receive deeply subsidized support. Since October 7th, the need has only grown. Anxiety, grief, displacement, and trauma have affected families across the community. Staff members volunteered to support parents and spouses of soldiers, worked with evacuees from the south, and treated families coping with loss. Chernovsky says even in the darkest moments, she witnesses something remarkable.
The thing that I love the most is seeing the resilience of people and how they overcome childhood trauma and get out of abusive situations, and it gives me a lot of inspiration.
The center, like many of Emunah's other facilities, also runs support groups, specialized family therapy for divorced parents and children, and art therapy programs that give teenage girls a safe way to express painful emotions. Emunah relies on contributions from abroad to keep these centers operating and therapy accessible. For Chernovsky, the work is deeply personal and deeply hopeful.
It's just really a gift that we can give people.
In a country still healing, that gift may shape not only individual lives, but the emotional future of Israeli society itself.
Deep underground in Jerusalem, in fortified operating rooms, intensive care units, and maternity wards, doctors and nurses urgently treat patients, even while rockets are flying and sirens are blaring. Hadassah built these hospitals and is working to rapidly expand these underground facilities. Additional hospital beds and 6 advanced operating rooms are urgently needed. Please go to hadassah.org. Make a gift that helps Hadassah continue its long-standing, life-changing support of the Israeli people. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Good Week Israel, the show where we recap for you some of the positive highlights coming out of Israel from this week. I'm your host, Devo Klein, and coming up on today's show, relations with Hungary not going down the toilet with the newly elected Magyar. Israel remains at the forefront of cutting-edge bio-convergence tech. And Deni Avdia takes the Portland Trail Blazers straight to the playoffs. This week, Israel commemorated Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, where we honor the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust. Together with various ceremonies held across the nation, Israelis stand still for a 2-minute siren at the start of the day to reflect, remember, and pay their respects. I covered all of the day's events. Have a look at the report.
That just there was the Holocaust Remembrance Day siren. People are only now getting back into their cars and continuing on their ways.
as an entire nation comes to a standstill at 10 a.m. on Holocaust Remembrance Day to commemorate the memories of the 6 million Jews massacred in the Holocaust. The rest of the day is planned with programs and special events for the day. But let's take a closer look at what is expected for today and what was last night.
Last night's Holocaust Memorial Evening kicked off with the Western Wall lighting up with the text, "We will never forget." Down the road at the Yad Vashem National Holocaust Museum, the annual procession was taking place. Attended by politicians, Holocaust survivors, and other officials, the ceremony included the lighting of torches by survivors and these words from Prime Minister Netanyahu.
התחייבתי לא נאפשר לאיראן לפתח נשק גרעיני. וכראש ממשלת ישראל הבטחתי לא תהיה שואה נוספת. השנה מימשנו הבטחה זו הלכה למעשה. הנחתנו על משטר האימים באיראן את המכה הקשה ביותר בתולדותיו.
In the morning, a 2-minute-long siren at 10 a.m. brought the country to a halt to honor the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust. Later in the day, the March of the Living ceremony took place in Poland at the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial Site, bringing together survivors and participants from around the world. Today, we remember and honor the victims, fulfilling the everlasting promise of remembrance for the sake of the Jewish nation, the State of Israel, and those who lost their lives to the very threat still seeking to destroy us today. We will never forget and never forgive.
And speaking of Holocaust Memorial Day, the annual March of the Living ceremony took place at the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp in Poland. There, World Jewish Congress President Sylvan Adams inspired attendees with the everlasting mission of the World Jewish Congress, remembering Jewish history and combating anti-Semitism today. Take a look.
I'm so proud to be at this year's March of the Living, representing the World Jewish Congress Israel, together with our president, Sylvan Adams, marching for those who perished, for those who survived, for our hostages who are back home, for our soldiers who are fighting, marching for the Jewish people, marching against anti-Semitism, and proclaiming to the world that we are here.
Thousands gathered at Auschwitz-Birkenau for the annual March of the Living, a powerful display of remembrance and unity led by Holocaust survivors and Jewish communities from around the world. Speaking on Holocaust Remembrance Day at Auschwitz, President of the World Jewish Congress Sylvan Adams warned that anti-Semitism is not only persisting, but evolving into a global and organized threat.
The main foreign forces are Iran, with their proxies spreading their tentacles all over the world. We have Qatar that has invested, that has sent radicalized imams into the mosques to radicalize the Muslim population of the West. And also at the same time, the Qataris have spent hundreds of billions of dollars in education. Of course, we know about their activities in the universities, but now they're going even younger. They're going into high schools. So they're basically brainwashing the next generation. And then finally, we have the Chinese, and the Chinese are the owners and manipulators of TikTok, which is the most virulently anti-Semitic of the social media platforms. And at the same time, China is a superpower. It has a veto at the United Nations Security Council, and they are giving cover to Iran and Qatar, and essentially with completely different perspectives, they form an axis of evil. So unless we identify the enemy and the battlefield, so we have three enemies and the battlefields. The battlefields are the mosques, the education system, and social media. So we know now that we've identified the problem, now we have to have a plan to deal with it.
The World Jewish Congress, which represents Jewish communities in over 100 countries, is working to combat these trends by strengthening international cooperation, supporting security efforts, and advocating for Jewish communities worldwide. The March of the Living serves as both a memorial and a warning, reinforcing the need for vigilance, education, and global action as anti-Semitism continues to rise. Ending with a positive message in the torch-lighting ceremony, Adams said this:
"Those who feel afraid and intimidated, those who feel exposed, those who are told to hide who they are. And I say to them, you are not alone. We stand with you. We will speak We will defend who we are with clarity, with strength, and with pride.
And while we're in Europe, some good news in diplomatic relations with Hungary, one of Israel's closest allies in the EU. Following elections, outgoing Prime Minister Viktor Orban conceded his 16-year term to newly elected Peter Magyar, sparking a lot of fear in Jerusalem that relations between the two countries could suffer. However, Magyar surprised us, promising to combat anti-Semitism in Hungary and also exchanging pleasantries with Israeli officials. Let's see.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has congratulated Hungary's Peter Magyar on his electoral victory, while also paying tribute to outgoing Prime Minister Viktor Orban. In a post, Netanyahu describes Orban as a true friend of Israel, saying he stood firmly by Israel in the face of international criticism and supported Israel during its war of self-defense against terrorists. He added that the people of Israel will forever remember this. At the same time, Netanyahu congratulated Magyar on his win, writing on X that he wished him success in leading Hungary and in strengthening ties between the two countries. He said he looked forward to continuing cooperation between Israel and Hungary for the benefit of both nations. For his part, Magyar indicated continuing friendship with Israel and zero tolerance for anti-Semitism.
Izrael és Magyarország kapcsolata kapcsán azt tudom elmondani, hogy nyilván van egy speciális viszony Izrael és Magyarország között. Rengeteg magyar honfitársunk él Izraelben, rengeteg izraeli állampolgár jön ide Magyarországra, egy nagyon erős zsidó közösség él Magyarországon, az egyik legnagyobb Európában, szerencsére békében és biztonságban. Magyarországon eddig is zéró tolerancia volt az antiszemitizmus minden formájával szemben, és ezután is ez lesz. Még olyanokat se fogunk tenni, amit az Orbán kormány tett különböző propaganda kiadványokban, és akkor azt most le is zárom, és nem mondom tovább. Egy fontos gazdasági partner Izrael, és fogunk tovább dolgozni, pragmatikus viszonyra törekszünk. Azt nem tudom garantálni, hogy persze meg kell vizsgálni minden ügyet és minden döntést, de hogy Magyarország továbbra is blokkolni fogja az Uniónak a döntéseit Izrael kapcsán. De mondom, itt nem akarok előre szaladni, meg fogjuk nézni, hogy mikor milyen döntést hoz az Unió, és mi az érdek, és mi az igazság.
And now a new report by the Israel Innovation Authority is showing that funding in the National Bio-convergence program is already paying off, and big time. To learn more about what exactly bioconvergence is and how it could revolutionize the world, have a look at this report.
Nearly 1 billion shekels has been invested in Israel's national bioconvergence program over the past 3 years, according to a new report from the Israel Innovation Authority, positioning the country at the forefront of a rapidly growing global field. The program brings together biology, engineering, and artificial intelligence to develop new solutions across healthcare, food production, energy, and advanced manufacturing. Today, nearly 200 companies are operating in the space, roughly double the number from just 5 years ago. At the heart of the effort is a coordinated national strategy, combining government funding, private investment, and academic research to create what officials describe as a new economic growth engine.
Biology gives us many more solutions than before and allows us to be more efficient and more accurate and more economically viable than ever before.
The report highlights a surge in private sector involvement, alongside major investments in research infrastructure and diverse multidisciplinary consortia, working on everything from gene editing to cultivated meat and disease detection. Israel has also gained global attention, with organizations like the World Economic Forum and OECD adopting elements of its approach as a model for other countries.
And Israel is a relatively small player in volume, but a very high power player in the quality and the agility of how we bring products and processes to the market.
Regulatory advances are helping startups move faster, with Israel among the first countries to approve cultivated food products and advance cutting-edge medical technologies. Officials say the long-term commitment to research and development is key to sustaining momentum and attracting further international collaboration.
We're trying to capitalize as much as we can and bring forth these joint solutions on a global level.
As global demand for bio-based solutions grows, Israel is aiming to leverage its scientific and technological strengths to compete with much larger economies.
I think that's a signal for a new wave of technological collaboration, which should be and is global, and we're thankful for that.
With billions being invested worldwide in what many call the bioeconomy, Israel is positioning itself not just to participate, but to lead.
And now, a funny little story about a weather phenomenon in Israel. Spring has rolled around, which means the air is getting warmer, the flowers are filled with pollen, and the bees have started flocking in massive groups to find new homes for their colonies. The sights may be disturbing if you're not a big fan of bees, but take a look at this massive takeover by the Yellow and Blacks in southern Israel.
And moving on now to an intriguing story. Israel's south has been taken over by massive swarms of bees. As Israel enters peak swarm season, temperatures are rising, flowers are blooming with lots of pollen, and the bees, well, they're celebrating. Take a look at some of the footage captured. Massive swarms have taken over shopping centers in Netivot, southern Israel. Authorities stress that residents stay indoors and close all windows. Beekeepers have been called to multiple locations to extract beehives, including one found inside a couch in a residential home and even a military base near Gaza. During swarm season, bee colonies split and reproduce by sending out a huge group of bees with their queen to find a new home. They often cluster around farms, irrigated areas, and flowering zones, landscape often seen in southern Israel.
And for tonight's sports story, Israeli NBA star Deni Avdija continues capturing headlines and the hearts of die-hard basketball fans back home after delivering one of the most stunning performances that's already being called a defining moment in his career. Dropping a career-high 41 points, leading a dramatic late comeback, and most importantly, clinching the NBA playoffs for his team, the Portland Trail Blazers, for the first time in 4 years. More on how much this one means to fans back at home in this report.
Deni Avdija's breakthrough performance has triggered widespread excitement in Israel, where the NBA star has one of the most passionate international fan bases in the league. Leading his team with 41 points, the Portland Trail Blazers staged a dramatic late comeback to defeat the Phoenix Suns 114-110 in a Western Conference play-in game in Phoenix. Avdija's three-point play with 16.1 seconds remaining sealed the turnaround after Portland erased an 11-point fourth-quarter deficit, while he also contributed 12 assists and 7 rebounds in a complete all-around display. Avdija scored 14 points in the fourth quarter alone, anchoring the comeback that shifted momentum in the final minutes and delivered one of the standout performances of the play-in stage. Portland now advances to a best-of-7 first-round playoff series against the San Antonio Spurs, ending a 4-year absence from the postseason. The moment marks a major milestone for Israeli basketball, with Avdija's rise in the NBA continue to inspire a growing young fan base back at home, and solidifying his status as one of Israel's biggest sports exports. For supporters, Avdija has become a symbol of national pride, the first Israeli-born player to lead a team into the NBA playoffs while playing a central role on the court. Deni continues to inspire fans back at home, and we are all rooting for him.
And now get ready to feel inspired. One story of a young girl living in Texas has changed the lives of thousands of Israelis, and she doesn't even speak Hebrew. I want you all to meet Yocheved Ruttenberg, who told ILTV her story of Aliyah in this inspiring piece. Have a look.
I was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. I grew up in a very religious home, and my parents got divorced when I was 10. That made me completely come away from Judaism. So I pretty much had nothing to do with Judaism until October 7th. It was interesting because I had a brother that was living here in Israel and was in the army. So he moved when he was 17. It was never my game plan to really make Aliyah. So when October 7th happened, I was living in Dallas, Texas, and I was living in pretty much the most American community you can imagine. I was living in a travel trailer that I bought and completely renovated myself. I was working in construction, doing door-to-door roofing sales, driving an F-150, living in the middle of Texas. I woke up on October 7th in the morning. I opened my phone and I was flooded with everything that was happening here. My brother put me in all of the different WhatsApp group chats and Telegram chats, so I was seeing like really everything as they were coming through. I tried calling him and he wasn't answering. I basically decided like right then and there I was coming to Israel. I called my mom and I said, Mom, I want to go to Israel. And she said to me, if you don't go to Israel, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. I think every Jew across the world feels this. When they come to Israel, this is home. To come during such a time like the beginning of the war, you can't even explain. It's the kind of thing that you needed to be here to feel it. You can't even explain the energy that was in this country, the people coming together, what was needed here, the feeling of purpose and meaning that you get from being here in Israel. That needs to come from being here and taking part in the community and helping this country.
Check it out, baby. It's pouring rain and we're here picking strawberries.
Nefesh B'Nefesh has been so supportive. I couldn't have made Aliyah without them. They made it so easy for me to make Aliyah. I literally showed up to one of their days where they have like their Aliyah days. I got everything done, everything handled, taken care of. They told me exactly what to do. They made it so easy for me to make Aliyah. Israel is a community. It's we, not I. And I really felt that as soon as I landed here. I quit my job and I was staying here in Israel and I was like, okay, what can I do and how can I help? And I realized that there was a huge need for people around the world to help Israel. So many people kept reaching out to me and saying, I want to be involved, I want to volunteer, I want to give back, how can I help? I was in all these different WhatsApp chats that were all in Hebrew, asking for tons of volunteers, like hour by hour. And I realized that if we were able to take all of this different information and make it in English and centralize it so that it was very easy to find, people would get involved and they would volunteer. From there, we really took off. Now we're an actual nonprofit. We have over 47,000 members in our online community. We work with over 200 different organizations all over the country and farms and people who just need help and support. We're doing amazing work. And when you volunteer and you take part in helping heal a country, it connects you to this land and its people in a different type of way. For people who are abroad that are thinking about making Aliyah and aren't sure or just kind of playing with the idea, this is home. And we need you. We need every single Jew around the world to come to this country, to help us build it, to help us be a stronger nation. And it's not as difficult as it was. Like there really is this stigma that says making Aliyah is difficult, and there's no doubt that there will always be difficulties when you're picking up your life and you're moving to a different country. But number one, Israel's worth it. And number two, it's not as difficult as it seems or as it sounds. And I've been able to build a massive organization, global organization to support Israel without speaking Hebrew. So I hope that just goes to show, like, you don't need to have all the things in place in order to do it. You just need to start taking steps and moving forward.
Meanwhile, as Israel continues to grapple with the emotional toll of war, one counseling center in Beit Shemesh is working quietly to restore hope and resilience, one family at a time. Take a look.
In the heart of Beit Shemesh in central Israel, the Emunat Rachel Family Counseling Center opens its doors each day to individuals and families carrying invisible wounds. One of 11 World Emunah Therapy Centers across Israel, the Beit Shemesh branch sees around 110 individuals and families every week. Its 20 therapists offer talk therapy, art therapy, play therapy, family counseling, and EMDR trauma treatment, often at a fraction of the cost charged privately. Director Nancy Trinovsky, who has led the center for more than 2 decades, says the goal is simple: to restore strength where it has been shaken.
We try to help people reconnect with their resilience, with their inner strength.
Beit Shemesh is one of Israel's most diverse cities, home to veteran Israelis, new immigrants, ultra-Orthodox and modern Orthodox families. The center serves them all, ensuring no one is turned away because of financial hardship. Single parents pay reduced fees, and many women rebuilding their lives after abusive marriages receive deeply subsidized support. Since October 7th, the need has only grown. Anxiety, grief, displacement, and trauma have affected families across the community. Staff members volunteered to support parents and spouses of soldiers, worked with evacuees from the south, and treated families coping with loss. Chernovsky says even in the darkest moments, she witnesses something remarkable.
The thing that I love the most is seeing the resilience of people and how they overcome childhood trauma and get out of abusive situations, and it gives me a lot of inspiration.
The center, like many of Emuna's other facilities, also runs support groups, specialized family therapy for divorced parents and children, and art therapy programs that give teenage girls a safe way to express painful emotions. Emuna relies on contributions from abroad to keep these centers operating and therapy accessible. For Chernovsky, the work is deeply personal and deeply hopeful.
It's just really a gift that we can give people.
In a country still healing, that gift may shape not only individual lives, but the emotional future of Israeli society itself.
And that's all for today's Good Week Israel. I hope we've helped to deliver some positive news that you get to now take with you into this week ahead. As always, I'm Devo Klein. Take care, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.
Everyone wants to know what is going on at the White House. Let's have a listen to what President Trump just said.
Is this war over?
I think it's close to over, yeah. I mean, I view it as very close to over. You know what? If I pulled up stakes right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild that country.
Okay, so on the one hand, Mark, all right, so President Trump just said basically that the war is over. On the other hand, listen to another thing he said, and this time outside of the White House.
I can tell you that we've been called by the other side. They'd like to make a deal very badly, very badly.
What was the sticking point over? You said it was over nuclear.
It was over nuclear, very similar, yeah, very good. I guess you're listening. It's over the fact that they will never have a nuclear weapon. Iran, you marking it down? Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. I think they will agree to it. I'm almost sure of it. In fact, I am sure of it. If they don't agree, there's no deal. There'll never be a deal.
Before we get started, Mark, I'd like to tell our viewers that today is Wednesday, April 15th. And I know that some of you have said that it's really important that we stress that given the very busy news cycle that we're all in these days. Okay, so I'm Ruthie Bloom. I'm here in the JNS studio, and joining me remotely is my co-host, Mark Regev. So, Mark, what do you make of what President Trump said? Is this war over?
So, it's a good question, and I think it depends on how you define war. Is it possible that the high-intensity part is over? I don't know. The president has been surprising the world, and more importantly, he's been surprising the Iranians, which keeps them off balance. I mean, they thought they had the world on its choke point. They thought they had the world at their mercy because they control the Straits of Hormuz, and they thought that the whole world will come to them. I even heard some commentators saying that this was as good as having a nuclear weapon because the whole world needed that oil coming out of the Straits. And what did President Trump do? He said, if you're going to blockade the Straits, I'm going to blockade the Straits. And in many ways, I think he's neutralized their ability to hold the cards, to hold all the cards. And I think it was a very clever move. And I would expect as this goes forward, we can probably expect more moves like this.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, it's almost misleading to say that he blocked the Straits or the Strait of Hormuz. What he actually did was block all access points, all Iranian ports, so that the Islamic Republic cannot export oil and gas. And that's the source of its money. And he's actually choking them off. You're right. He said, you guys open the strait. And they were, the Islamic Republic regime was taking tolls. They said, no, they were holding the Strait of Hormuz hostage. And President Trump pulled a fast one on them. He said, oh, yeah, I'll show you. Who are you, you little dictators? No, not when I'm around. And so he blocked off access to Iran's ability to make any money. And that will, as it is, Iran's economy is really destroyed, and this will make it even worse. Now, but the question here is he pulling a fake out? On the one hand, he said, we're giving them 2 weeks ceasefire, and I believe that ends in next week at some point, maybe around the time of Israel's Independence Day. But he also said, no nukes. They cannot have nuclear weapons. They can't have enriched uranium. They can't have the nuclear dust, so to speak. And they cannot have the ability to enrich uranium basically ever. Okay. And the people who came to negotiate with J.D. Vance, with Vice President J.D. Vance, and Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner left after 21 hours of meetings. J.D. Vance said, no, we made lots of progress. We made lots of progress, but basically our red line is no nukes. And they said no. Okay. Then there were these reports, which I think are total fake news, saying that America was going to agree to allow them in 20 years to start enriching uranium. But then that would have made this deal, so-called deal, not much different from Obama's JCPOA. So I didn't believe those reports and all that. But the bottom line is this. When you say the high-intensity aspect of the war may be over, right, we're not seeing missiles flying from Iran, and Israel and the U.S. are not launching attacks on Iran either. However, Israel has been bombarded daily, nightly, by Hezbollah missiles from Lebanon, mostly on northern Israel. But, Israel is a tiny, tiny country, and northern Israel is a huge portion of it. So I'd like you to address that issue of the separation of Hezbollah from the Islamic Republic, and tell me a little bit about what just went on in Washington with regard to Lebanon and Israel.
So with your permission, Ruthie, I'll start with Iran. Well, you said that he's blockaded all the oil going out of the Iranian ports, and that's correct. And as you said very correctly also, that's their lifeline. Yes, what are they going to do if they can't sell their oil? And he, once again, he answered them, can you say tooth for tooth? He got straight in there and they said, you're doing it, so I can do it too. It's also not clear to me, but he obviously has an option, Ruthie, if he wants to blockade imports into Iran, right? Which gives him a huge trigger, a huge weapon to use there. Because if he can prevent goods going into Iranian ports, I mean, theoretically, I'm sure Iran is determined they don't grow everything they need for their own people. He has really the ability to restrict what can go in if he chooses to use that as well. It'll be very interesting. It's a standoff now because the Iranians have imposed their own blockade. He's imposed a blockade on them. And I would argue that the Iranians are going to increasingly suffer now because they can't, a lot of pressure on them from their friends, whether it's the Chinese or others, who will say to them, listen, this is not sustainable, right? If you can't get your oil out, the only reason we really like you is because of your oil. And if you can't get your oil out, that's a problem. And I think there'll be more and more pressure on the Iranians to compromise. And the question is, after, I presume they'll be meeting again, J.D. Vance and Witkoff and Kushner will be meeting again with the Iranian team in a second round of these talks. And the only serious question is, will they overcome the gaps and will there be able to be a solution? So I would like to tell you what my opinion is. And that is, number one, the most important issue in the talks is the nuclear issue. Because the minute you solve that, the issue of the Straits, everything else can fall into place. Of course, I'd like regime change. Of course, I'd like ballistic missiles. I'd also like proxies, but I believe in prioritizing. And the most important thing in here, I think President Trump is 100% correct. We've got to focus on the nuclear issue because that's the big one. Everything else is small compared to the nuclear issue. We cannot allow, as the president has repeatedly said, we cannot allow this regime to have nuclear weapons. Now, I don't think that what the Americans are talking about, what Trump is talking about, you expressed concern that this could just be another rehash of the JCPOA, Obama's failed nuclear agreement. And I would argue, no, it doesn't look like it's going that direction at all. Because first of all, the president is demanding the removal of all enriched uranium currently in Iran. Whether it goes to Russia or to somewhere else, it doesn't bother me, but all that uranium has to leave. In other words, when this process is over, Iran will have no enriched uranium. I understand the president is also very, very strong on they can't enrich new uranium. They can't enrich more uranium. And the minute you deal with those issues, I think you're dealing with their ability to make a bomb, and you've substantially prevented that from happening. Now, you express concern that the Americans have put this 20-year time.
No. Excuse me. Let me interrupt you. I said the fake news media said that. I said it's a fake report. Axios, the New York Times. No. I don't believe it precisely because it will just be another JCPOA. I do not believe it. The fake news media is spreading that.
So once again, if you get a time limit which is decades away, right? I would like no time limit at all, yes? But once again, I don't want any time limit at all. But I think if you start talking about something that's 50 years ago away, and that's a face-saver for the Iranians, and who knows what's going to happen in the next 50 years, yes, as far as that regime is going, I think you can play with that. Now, I don't want to play with that. I'd prefer something unequivocal. But if you're negotiating, I think that's the sort of issue where maybe you can give them something symbolic, like for the next 50 years. I don't like 20. 20 is too close. 20 passes very quickly. But I think if you can get a deal that actually, what was the problem with JCPOA, with Obama's deal? It actually never did what it was supposed to do. It never stopped them getting nuclear weapons. What Trump is actually talking about is stopping them getting nuclear weapons, and that's a crucial difference.
Okay, so here's the thing, Mark. Forget about this, a deal can be made if. No deal can be made with this regime. The minute any deal is made with any of the figures existing right now who have not been eliminated, assassinated, blitzed in airstrikes, anybody remaining standing is an enemy of the United States, certainly of Israel, of the West. And the only difference between those who are saying we should make a deal, such as the president possession, he is furious that the team came back to Tehran with no deal. It's not that he's a moderate. The difference between the moderates and the so-called moderates and extremists is the moderates believe in faking out the West, the tenet of Islam that says you can lie. In fact, you're supposed to lie in order to get what you want. In the long term, you have patience. And the others who say, no, we don't even want to lie. We're waiting for the 12th imam and all of this, because they are all fanatics and they are all evil, part of the evil regime. And what I do believe is if you prevent them from having nukes and you prevent them from exporting their oil, there is no regime. And that's the beauty of it. You keep saying that I demand perfection. The regime will fall if it has no oxygen. And if it doesn't, and if it keeps being intransigent, I actually believe that we might go back to military means again.
I don't exclude that, Ruthie. I don't exclude that at all. I think it's quite possible to go back to military means. But I want to quote the two relevant leaders here. Netanyahu said publicly, he said they won't have nuclear enriched uranium. They won't have the ability to enrich more. He said that can be done through diplomacy, or that can be done through kinetic, warfare. We can destroy what they have. What's he saying, though? He's saying there is a diplomatic option. And when the president has sent this team headed by the vice president to negotiate with the Iranians, it's clear there are no negotiations with the Iranian regime. To say you're against negotiations with the Iranian regime, that could be your opinion, and I can respect that. But that's not what's going on. There are negotiations with the Iranian regime, and the goal is to get a deal, unlike the JCPOA, a deal that actually does the job. Now, you can tell me you think that that's impossible, and the jury is out. All I'm saying, because I'm not sure the Iranians can agree to the sort of red lines that America and Israel believe are the bare minimum, of what needs to happen in these negotiations. But I don't rule it out up front. I think with all this, damage that we've inflicted on the Iranians, is it possible that they'll agree to things that they've never agreed to in the past? I think not. And if they hold out and we continue doing military action against them, maybe we're getting closer to that goal. I would argue you don't have to go back to all-out war. You could do something surgical. You could take over that island where all the oil goes. You could do a surgical the use of ground forces here or there to take out clear targets. You can strike, yes, at different places without going back to full war. And of course, you have the option, if you have no choice, of going back to full war, which is continuing strikes against the Iranian regime. But it's clear to me that Trump prefers a negotiated solution if he can get it.
Okay, what he really wants is for the Islamic Republic to surrender. That's the deal. You surrender, we win, you lose. How about that for a deal? Second, now that brings us to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Why? Because the negotiations that are going on in Washington, it's unprecedented. Israeli negotiators and Lebanese negotiators meeting under the auspices of Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And now, many people are saying, look, there's nothing they can do because they're negotiating with one another. But meanwhile, Hezbollah is firing rockets. Now here, if you take this as an example of what I think, yes, you have to have military and diplomatic. Now, in all this time with these talks, Israel has not stopped engaging in war against Hezbollah. And mainly the reason that these talks with Lebanon are taking place is because Lebanon has been unable or unwilling to defeat Hezbollah by itself. First of all, Hezbollah is deeply embedded in the Lebanese government and army, etc. But the Lebanese people are fed up, like the Iranian people. Now, we have to just say one word about the Iranian people that keep getting sidetracked in all these discussions about nukes and everything. This period of no missiles flying, it could be, for all you know, there's stuff going on behind the scenes to help the Iranian people get ready to come out to the streets. Now, they were slaughtered in the tens of thousands. And by the way, it's very urgent right now because, because there are mercenaries coming in, militias coming in from Iraq to help the regime gun down more, execute more of the innocent Iranian people. We cannot forget them. And let's not forget that Trump said at weeks before February 28th, when the war began, Trump said to the Iranian people, help is on the way. And yes, this is helping them. And even though they're living in utter, I would say, chaos, terror, they are still, so they want President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu to finish the job. They want them to keep firing on the regime figures. They do want that. And so I believe we have to help them. Just as now, we just had a Holocaust Remembrance Day. And we say never again, never again. And Jews have complained, rightly so, how the world turned its back on the Jewish people during the Holocaust. We cannot turn our backs on the Iranian people either.
Having said that, both the president and the prime minister have said it's the job of the Iranian people.
It is.
By weakening the regime, we're giving them an opportunity.
Correct.
And I don't think we can do it for the Iranian people instead of the Iranians.
No, but to weaken the Iranian regime, you can't make deals with it. Then you're right back to where you started.
Once again, you said that Trump wants them to capitulate, right?
Mm-hmm.
He wants an agreement. He said once unconditional surrender.
Surrender.
If they do surrender and give him everything that he wants on the nuclear issue, Ruthie, then you're going to have a deal with the Iranian regime.
Not just the nuclear issue. I'm sorry. There are ballistic missiles. There are terror proxies. No, surrender doesn't mean just the nuclear issue, but although that's the key one, yes, because all the rest follows.
All I'm saying is, Ruthie, is that I want regime change in Iran. I think everyone wants to see regime change in Iran. Most of all, the people of Iran want to see regime change in Iran. I'm just saying I'm not sure you can build policy on that. I would remind you, and I've said it before on this program, that between the operation of June 25 and the outburst of the popular revolt against the government, it took 6-7 months. And so once this war is over, it doesn't mean regime change is off. Yes, regime change could still be on the cards, maybe even more so. I'm just not saying as a policy option, it's not saying we keep the war going until there's regime change. I don't think anyone is saying that. Will you allow me to address the Lebanon issue, though, which you raised quite correctly because it's in the news and it's important, but there's something very surrealistic about what's going on in Washington because, I mean, we're talking to the Lebanese government, and the Lebanese government says it wants to have good and peaceful relations with Israel, and can we solve all the problems? Why do I say surrealistic? Because the Lebanese government is weak. The Lebanese government is, unfortunately, that they say the right things, and increasingly they've been saying the right things recently. Do they have the ability to implement any of their nice statements? And here the question is very open. Because if we look at the facts, I mean, they took a decision, what was it, 3 weeks ago to expel the Iranian ambassador? They couldn't even do that. They couldn't even expel the Iranian ambassador. Now, they've made all these new laws and they've made the Iranian Revolutionary Guards against, they have to leave and Hezbollah has to disarm and all these things, but they don't have the power to push through. And so while we want peace in Lebanon, we have to understand that Lebanon's, I mean, first of all, that they say the right things and they're meeting with us and they want to discuss peace is all very good. And we should, I always say, if an Arab country wants to make peace with Israel, let's talk. There's no reason to close the door. But we have to understand that Hezbollah is the real power, unfortunately, today inside Lebanon. And so Israel defeating Hezbollah militarily, I think, will create the conditions for peace between Israel and Lebanon. I think it also plays in with the Iranian issue, is that if Iran comes out of this conflict weaker, defanged, yes, weaker economically, weaker militarily, weaker politically, that means their ability to help Hezbollah reestablish itself will be much less, much, much less, which means that if we also, I think, strengthening the chance of a deal with Lebanon, but it all depends on defeating Hezbollah militarily, because without doing that, they hold the cards in Lebanon. You've got to take those cards away from them.
I totally agree. The difference now is that it's not that the Lebanese government is stronger or the Lebanese military is stronger. In fact, they're terrified of Hezbollah and they're also infiltrated by Hezbollah. The beauty of this meeting is that it's the first time that Lebanon is actually, in its way, acknowledging that Israel is doing a good thing by fighting Hezbollah, rather than saying, you're bombing our country, you're ruining our country. Finally, you're hearing voices from Lebanon saying, we don't want you to bomb our country. First of all, Hezbollah uses civilian infrastructure to commit its terrorism, like Hamas, like the Islamic Republic, etc. That's their MO, right? They hide behind civilians. And that's why Israel tells the civilian population to evacuate, and in this case, move north, move beyond the Litani River, etc. But it's the first time that the Lebanese government is not attacking Israel for doing it. So if Lebanon were to say, look, we'll make a deal, we're just weak, please keep fighting. And that's not what they're saying, but it's implied to some extent, because they did not demand that we stop firing on Hezbollah while they went to Washington, while the group met in Washington. So that's a hint. That's a good sign that they didn't say. At first they did say, yes, so let's have a ceasefire and, with Hezbollah as well, and then we'll have talks. No, and Israel did not agree to it. And President Trump didn't insist on it. He didn't insist that Israel stop firing on Hezbollah during this ceasefire with Iran. And Lebanon, in the end, didn't insist on having that as a precondition for meeting in Washington with Secretary Rubio. So these are all good signs. But without military defeat, Hezbollah is going to, Hezbollah, again, they're like cockroaches. You kill some, then more crop up. You have to solve this. It's not enough militarily, but you have to solve it by pressure from all directions. Military is one form.
I think the military component is essential. It's not just one form, it's essential. And I think we have a good card to play because, as you know, Ruthie, we have at the moment a large Israeli force, boots on the ground in southern Lebanon, which are dealing with Hezbollah's infrastructure there in the south. Now, of course, Hezbollah has infrastructure in the north as well. Some of the rockets fired in Israel are fired from other parts of Lebanon, not from the south. But what is the crucial change here? Because Israel is on the ground, and Israel has said, the defense minister has said, Israel Katz has said, we are in Lebanon until we can be convinced that Hezbollah is not going to return to the south and pose an attack to Israel. In other words, we have a card to play in a peace agreement with Lebanon. The minute you can guarantee, the government of Lebanon can guarantee that Israel will not face hostile fire from Lebanon, not from the Lebanese state, but from Lebanese territory. I'm talking about Hezbollah, of course. Then we stay put. And I think that's very powerful leverage, right? The idea that Israel pulls out and there's some UN force, be there, done that, doesn't help. Israel will stay put in southern Lebanon in lieu of a peace agreement that sees Hezbollah disarmed and Lebanese sovereignty in southern Lebanon. Not quasi, what am I trying to say here? Not just, something that's symbolic Lebanese presence, but real Lebanese government presence and not Hezbollah. So we've got this card to play. We have to play it at the right time, and it should be an incentive for Lebanon to do the right things. You want Israel to leave the south, you have to disarm Hezbollah. You have to make sure that Hezbollah isn't a threat towards Israel. Now, their ability to do that today is very limited, and that's why we'll be staying in southern Lebanon for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something else that occurred to me about Lebanon and why, and maybe the Lebanese government has eyes maybe on the Abraham Accords, because what is it? What are the Lebanese politicians, what are they witnessing? They're witnessing a whole reshaping of the world order. President Trump has been attacking NATO countries for not doing their bit. We see that the Abraham Accords countries are being under attack by Iran during this war. They got more missiles fired at them than Israel got. So what you're seeing is a realignment. And maybe Lebanon is saying, wow, that, you mentioned these international force like UNIFIL. Not only was UNIFIL useless in Lebanon, but it was in cahoots with Hezbollah and also did what the UN always does, condemned Israel, said that we fired purposely on UNIFIL forces. It was a lie. Okay, they were in bed with them the way UNRWA was in bed with Hamas. Maybe the Lebanese government is saying, look, here's our opportunity. We see that President Trump, we see what Europe is attacking Trump, attacking Israel, and actually the Abraham Accords countries are stepping up. So if there's a realignment, Lebanon would probably prefer to be in that protective, let's say, umbrella.
I agree. And I think we're talking about a larger regional change, which started in the Abraham Accords in Trump's first term. And I think as a result of this war against Iran and Israel's fighting against Hezbollah, I think that process only gets stronger. More and more people in the Arab world, they might not love Israel. They might not, call themselves Zionists. They might have solidarity with the Palestinians because that's their co-religionists and their fellow Arabs and so forth. But ultimately, they understand that Israel is a regional power. They respect Israel, and they understand that it's good to have a peace deal with Israel. It's good to live in Israel with a good neighborly relationship. More and more people in Lebanon want that. Even the Syrian talks about making a deal, some sort of deal with Israel. And so I think we're seeing, to use the Shimon Peres term, we're seeing in many ways a new Middle East based on Arabs and Israelis working together because it's in our mutual interest to do so. And I think what we've seen, I mean, the truth is, you've said, Ruthie, you want this regime to fall as quickly as possible. I'm not sure it will fall quickly. It might take more time. I'd like it to fall, as I've said, but it could take more time. But one of the positive things of it not falling is that as long as the Arab states see Iran as a threat, that pushes them more towards making peace with Israel. Why are the Lebanese talking to Israel more and more? Because they want someone to help them deal with their Hezbollah problem. And so I think this process of Arab-Israeli reconciliation will get stronger and stronger. The Palestinians will get nothing more than lip service from their Arab brethren.
Oh, definitely. I couldn't agree more. Although I just want to say, I want to make 2 points. One is, every time you talk about it, you say things like, well, it's not that those countries, are becoming Zionist or that they love Israel or they love Jews. You know what's ironic about it? It's the West that hates Israel now. It's the West that's turning on the Jews. Anti-Semitism is exploding all over the place. Again, an irony of the shift in the world order. That's number one. So you don't even have to say it's not that they suddenly love Israel. Yeah, I'd like to see Britain and France and all these other countries, so I got to tell you, the way they are allies, we don't need that kind of alliance, okay? I would rather have an alliance with Arab countries who actually, like you said, respect our power, which brings me to what you said about Shimon Peres's, New Middle East. He believed in that phony kind of New Middle East, but peace is busting out all over. This kind of peace is genuine if it's based on peace through strength and interests, as you said, and not some kind of la-la land baloney peace agreement type of, because every time somebody like Shimon Peres used the words peace, you had to duck from the missiles and suicide bombings coming at you. And all I'm saying now is that if we have new alliances with Arab countries and they end up being stronger than they are with Europe, well, so be it. It's a shame, okay? Because Europe is going to see that its behavior and its policies now are going to bring it down. We say the regime in Iran will fall. Europe is going to die if it keeps up its horrific policies, both of immigration, appeasement of terrorism, attacks on Israel. They're going to see what happened to their societies. And so it's fine with me if we have peace through strength with our Arab neighbors, yes.
Because you mentioned Europe, and yesterday was Yom HaShoah in Israel, the Holocaust Memorial Day according to the Hebrew calendar. Maybe I'll spend the last 2 minutes, because we're running to the end of our program, and talk about Yom HaShoah. And Israel faces challenges, yes, and the war with Iran is not over. Fighting in Lebanon, Israeli soldiers in action in Gaza. In Syria, we've got Israelis. We face many threats. But there's no doubt today that Israel is the preeminent regional power in the Middle East, and we have the closest friend in the world in the United States of America, which is the regional superpower, the global superpower. Now, why do I say this? I've said once, I think before on this program, my father was born in Magdeburg, Germany in 1931. And what world was it there for Jews? Yes, we were the victims, we were stateless, we were persecuted, we suffered genocide. His generation of Jews went through the horrors of the Holocaust. Where are we today with all our problems? We should never forget this. The Jewish people are no longer stateless. The Jewish people are no longer helpless. And most importantly, the Jewish people are no longer defenseless. We can defend ourselves against those who seek to hurt us, and we should never forget that. Yom HaShoah is about remembering the 6 million who were murdered, but it's also about remembering that we were once a people that couldn't protect itself. And Zionism and the Zionist revolution and the establishment of the State of Israel has given the Jews the power that all other countries have, the ability to be sovereign and the ability to protect our people. And the fact that there is one country on the planet that says we are the Jewish state and that we will prioritize protecting the Jewish people, that's a huge change, a positive change, and something that I think we can all be very proud of.
Oh, no question about it. And, unfortunately, many Israelis were so traumatized on October 7th, 2023, feeling that, wow, we said never again, but we almost had it again. Okay. However, as you pointed out, we quickly overcame that by fighting. We did not end up succumbing to that threat. So yes, it's an important lesson. I agree with you 100%. And before we sign off, I would just like to ask viewers who, if you liked our content, please like, subscribe, and join us next time.
See you next week, Ruthie.
Right now, everyone is watching ships. They're watching the headlines. They're watching the statements coming out of Washington, Tehran, and Pakistan. And most people think that this is about a negotiation. There's a little bit of a negotiation, but that's not what this is about. This is a test of will, a test of endurance, a test of who understands the game and who does not. Because the question sitting underneath everything we're seeing right now is really very, very simple. Who will blink first? Will it be the regime in Tehran, or will it be President Trump, the President of the United States? Now, if you don't understand how Iran thinks, you can't understand this process or anything how it's working. This is not just about politics. It's not just about strategy. This goes back to two deep roots that we have to dive into: Persian statecraft and the doctrine of the Shiites. You put these two things together and they produce something very, very specific, something that has been sadly lost on the West for many, many years. Patience as a weapon. There's a Persian proverb, muddy the waters and you'll be able to catch the fish. Muddy the waters and the fish don't know where to go, they slow down, and you can catch the fish you want. What does that mean? It means prolong the situation, obscure your intentions, exhaust your opponent. And then when they're tired, you take what you want. This is not just a metaphor. This is Iran's operational strategy. We're seeing it unfold right now. Iran does not negotiate to reach a deal. Iran negotiates to change the deal by outlasting you. Now, in order to run that strategy, the Iranian regime, the Iranian terror regime, needs two things. It needs to survive, and it needs leverage to use while it's surviving to wear down its opponent. If it loses either one of those, their entire system that they're banking on collapses. So where is their leverage coming from? Iran's first lever is pretty simple. We've talked about it before. It's energy. You disrupt the Hormuz Straits, you disrupt shipping, oil prices spike, and everything becomes more expensive. And suddenly, Europe, who has almost no skin in this game whatsoever up till now and has not answered the demands by the United States, and there are examples of Spain and other countries which have even refused to allow the United States to open their space, is under pressure. Europe is under pressure. European markets are under pressure. European politicians are under pressure because the prices of our cups of coffee, the flat screen TVs, all the prices are going up. And most importantly, when you pull into the gas station to fill up your car, you can see as that little thing keeps ticking, wow, this tank's costing me a lot of money. And even though the United States is relatively insulated, meaning it gets its oil domestically, the shock to the system has driven up U.S. oil prices as well. And that pressure flows back to Washington, back to the President of the United States. Now, here's the problem for Iran. Right now, President Trump doesn't seem overly concerned because the United States, as we just said, is less exposed than Europe. And because he understands something very, very critical. Short-term pain can be tolerated. And in fact, it is being tolerated. The United States is functioning. However, long-term strategic loss cannot. Meaning, if Iran has nuclear capabilities and is threatening the Straits of Hormuz with nuclear capability, or Israel, or Saudi Arabia, or the UAE, all of the United States allies, then that affects the United States. And if it has nuclear capabilities to secure the Straits of Hormuz, it means no matter what the situation, even if Iran and China decide to go after Taiwan and disrupt their industry, no one's going to be able to stop oil flowing from the Straits of Hormuz to power China's imperialist ambitions because they have a nuclear weapon. And that could drive right back home to Washington, D.C. Iran's second lever is time. And they're looking at the calendar. They're looking at the U.S. political system. And they're asking, can we drag this out until Trump is under pressure from his own party? The midterms. That's their bet. Now, Trump may be thinking two things. Either Congress is gridlocked anyway, so I might as well act now, and it's probably not going to change that much. Without a Congress that's functional, I'm going to be relying mostly on foreign policy, which is in my own hands. Or he might be going all in to try to secure a decisive outcome and define the political landscape in the future. But Iran is betting on time. They always bet on time. Now, the third lever that Iran may be betting on, and I think that this is weaker, and I'm not sure that they're betting on it, but they may be, is China. Iran would love to turn Hormuz into a confrontation between the United States and China. But here's where the U.S. has turned the tables, and this is critical to understand. The Straits of Hormuz, they're not closed to all shipping. It is not closed. Ships are able to move through the Straits of Hormuz. In fact, the United States has guaranteed ships will be able to move through, assuming we can clear out all of those mines, which we will over the next few days, and oil can continue to flow. There's only one restriction. A ship cannot load oil from Iranian ports. That's it. So what does that mean? A Chinese tanker can take oil from the UAE. It can take oil from Saudi Arabia. It can take oil from anywhere else in the Gulf. It just can't take oil from Iran. Now, that's the brilliance of the strategy, because China is still functioning even though the Straits of Hormuz is closed to Iranian shipping, meaning China's able to survive. Not great, but they're able to survive. The United States has taken Iran's greatest weapon and it's turned it into a wedge between Iran and China, because now China's getting its oil and the global system's functioning. And Iran is the one being isolated. Now think about the alternative. If Iran closes the Straits of Iran completely and they threaten all shipping, they don't hurt America first. They don't even hit Europe first. They hurt China. 70% of China's oil comes from the Middle East and the Gulf. And now China has a choice. It's either going to pressure Iran to back down, or it's going to turn to the United States to reopen the route. That's the trap. The U.S. has managed to flip this so that if Iran stops shipping through the Straits and China can no longer get any oil from the Gulf countries, China will have to pressure Iran to open the Straits. Now, let me explain something that most people don't understand, and I didn't understand it before looking into this clearly either. Oil wells are not faucets. You can't just turn them on and off like the faucet in your sink. Once an oil well is operational, it just keeps flowing. In order to stop production of an oil well and cap it, the pressure to the oil well drops, fluids build up in that well, the infrastructure degrades. Sometimes you can restart that well, but sometimes you can't even restart that well. No matter what you do, you'll never get the same output. We saw this in the United States, in Texas, and in North Dakota. During the 2020 crash, thousands of wells were shut in. Some of them came back weaker, but many of them never came back at all because they were no longer viable. Now apply that to Iran. If you block their exports, the storage of oil fills up, production stops, wells shut down. And now you're not just hitting today's Iranian economy, you're destroying Iran's future capacity as an oil provider. This is long-term damage. This is not a sanction. This is economic suffocation of the Iranian terror regime over time. And while all this is happening, while all of this suffocation is taking place right now, because Iran cannot get rid of its oil and its storehouses are overflowing, the negotiations are ongoing. To understand more about this, by the way, the oil production, if you speak Hebrew, and you are able to listen in Hebrew, there's a brilliant podcast that goes in depth by Nitzan David Fuchs, which is called the Mischak HaGadol, the big game. So what do we see is unfolding in front of us? More assets from the United States are moving into the region. Carrier groups like the Bush Carrier Group, amphibious forces, and massive logistical buildup is continuing into the Middle East. This is not static. This is two tracks that are happening at the same time, diplomacy and force, and they're running at the exact same time. In fact, there are numerous reports that there are hundreds of flights taking place over Iranian airspace, most likely looking for what a ground invasion will face, because if a ground invasion was to take place, there will be massive, massive aerial support before U.S. troops hit that soil. So all this is taking place. One hand is towards negotiation, and the other hand is building up force in case that negotiation does not give what the United States and Israel are both insisting on to this day, which is zero enrichment and the absolute dismantling of Iran's nuclear program, which up till now Iran is refusing to do. Now, let's talk about Pakistan. The talks are supposed to resume, maybe in Islamabad, maybe somewhere else. But even Trump is keeping the situation fluid, and that tells us something. The channel to negotiation is open, but as I mentioned, he's building up his forces, which shows that nothing is settled. All of those who are saying that the sky is falling down and claiming that the United States is backing off, and they keep saying that no matter what the United States does, it's the work of the New York Times and CNN and Haaretz in Israel to constantly try to project weakness. He's backing down. He didn't get what he wanted. It's a failure. It's not true. It's been a huge success, and he hasn't backed down. What is the United States demanding? It's not looking for a small deal. We heard just yesterday, Marco Rubio and Vice President Vance say he's not even looking for a partial deal. He is looking for a big deal, a complete dismantling, and the enrichment, remove the enriched uranium, and in return, a grand bargain. Economic integration for a new Iran, prosperity for a new Iran, and a pathway back into the world. That's the offer. But here's the problem. For Iran giving up their enriched uranium, it means giving up their leverage. And if they lose the leverage, they lose their ability to survive in the long run. So going back to their proverb, they're stalling, they're dragging, they're trying to muddy the waters because that's what they do. And inside Iran, what is the regime doing inside Iran? The regime is doing something very specific. It knows it cannot hurt Israel, it cannot hurt the United States. The one thing it can do is to convince its people that have a complete media blackout that the regime is still strong. They don't see what you and I see. They're not watching this podcast. They don't have access to the media. They're flooded with propaganda day in and day out. They're being told that the regime is winning. And, we've seen this before because during the previous operation in June, they said the same thing to their people. And it took months for reality to catch up to the Iranian people. In fact, it took 6 months between the end of the successful campaign in June until the Iranian people took to the streets in January, because it took them time to understand that the regime had been severely weakened. Look what's happening now, when close to 10,000 IRGC fighters, it seems, have been eliminated. Their storehouses are eliminated. Their ballistic missile building and manufacturing capacity has been eliminated. So we come back to the main question. Who blinks first? Does Iran come to the table and give in? I think it's highly, highly unlikely because their strategy is survival. Or does President Trump push this further? If this escalates, there are options. Continue choking the economy, maintain pressure through Hormuz, seize their strategic assets like Karj and like the other assets we spoke about in previous weeks, and increase the internal pressure on the regime by making sure that those people get access to news. This is not theoretical. This is what is being prepared right now. And here is what all this boils down to. If Iran blinks first, Trump gets a historic win. If Trump blinks first and Iran keeps its enriched uranium, this will have been an important war and set back Iran, but it's not going to be a historic win. And that will also mean that that regime survives the threat remains, and they keep their leverage. And no matter how it's going to be spun, this is not a full victory. Now, I want to say something important, I think, for many of us. This week, on Holocaust Remembrance Day, Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke about something really profound. That for the first time in 2,000 years, the Jewish people are not waiting. We are actually acting. It's 1936, 37, 38, and 39, and we see the threat rising on the horizon, but this time we are acting in advance. We are defending ourselves. We're taking our own fate into our own hands. And with God's help, we are striking those who seek to destroy us before they can act. Let's just take a step back and think about it. For 2,000 years, Jewish people were living in exile, persecution. We were defenseless. And now the Israel Defense Forces, our soldiers, and the resolve of the Israeli people and our leadership are willing to act. This is not a historic normality. This is historic, and it should never be taken for granted, which is why our enemies are so upset, which is why our enemies are trying to reframe them. Just like the other day, and when I had a debate with Mehdi Hassan made a claim. He's trying to reframe everything. He tried shifting the conversation from Iran's nuclear program to the fact that Israel may, according to foreign reports, have a nuclear weapon. This is his obsession. He made the claim that Israel is bound by a United Nations Security Council Resolution 487. That is false. Resolution 487, it's important for all of us to know, is not a Chapter 7 resolution. Only United Nations Chapter 7 resolutions are binding and enforceable. There are no Chapter 7 nuclear resolutions against Israel, but there are against Iran. And that matters because the facts matter. And we can look at Israel's enemies trying to distort those facts and shift this argument. So here we are. Ships are moving and will move through the straits. Negotiations are happening, but the pressure is building. And underneath this all, the one question that remains is who will blink first. Will Iran abandon its strategy of delay and give up its leverage? Or will the United States step back and leave the regime with enough strength to fight another day? This is not just about a deal. This is about the shape of the next decade, and maybe longer. Because in the end, history does not remember who talked the longest, who acted the longest. It remembers who held the line until victory. We are truly in formative days in the Middle East, for Israel, for the United States, and I think it's safe to say globally. Thank you for joining me on this True East podcast.
ILTV News, your source for Israel in English. Reporting from the ground where it happens, as it happens. An authentic, trusted voice in daily Israel news. Airing on 11 international TV channels and now launching a 24/7 Israeli news channel. Reaching millions every month across all social platforms. Independent, real, powered by truth. We don't just report, we connect. Thanks to a worldwide community that stands for truth. This is ILTV, your source for Israel in English.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. I'm Khaled Ben David, coming to you live from Israel with all of the headline stories from across the region. Here are the latest developments. Today, Israel is marking Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day, remembering and honoring those who have fallen in service or been killed in terror attacks. In total, Israel is commemorating 25,648 fallen soldiers, police, and security personnel, including those who have defended the Zionist enterprise going back to 1860. A 1-minute siren sounded across Israel at 8 p.m. last night, marking the start of Memorial Day. The siren was followed by an official state ceremony at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, attended by President Isaac Herzog, Defense Minister Israel Katz, and IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir. This morning, the names of the fallen are being read at the Hall of Remembrance on Mount Herzl. A 2-minute siren sounded at 11 a.m., followed by the main state memorial ceremony at the site. A total of 174 members of Israel's security forces have been killed during their service since last Memorial Day. That includes 2 soldiers who were killed over this past weekend by Hezbollah explosive devices in South Lebanon. Another 54 veterans died due to complications from injuries sustained during their service over the past year. May all of their memories be a blessing. Memorial Day will conclude this evening at 8 p.m. local time, at which point Israel will shift immediately into celebrating its 78th Independence Day. Only 2 days before the U.S.-Iran ceasefire is due to expire, a second round of talks could begin later today in Islamabad. According to Pakistani sources, both delegations have confirmed participation, though uncertainty remains, as Iranian sources say their negotiating team has not yet confirmed travel plans. President Trump told Fox News a deal could be signed today in Islamabad, and said a U.S. delegation led by Vice President J.D. Vance is already en route. Trump dismissed concerns the talks could collapse, saying nobody's playing games, while reiterating that Iran must abandon any nuclear ambitions, warning that if talks fail, it would not be pretty. A senior Iranian official said Tehran is considering positively participation in the talks, but lead negotiator Mohammad Bakir Kalibaf would not take part unless Vice President Vance is also in attendance. Kalibaf also said in a statement, "We do not accept negotiations under the shadow of threats, and over the past 2 weeks we have prepared to unveil new cards on the battlefield." Well, even as tensions persist over the U.S. naval blockade, which Iran says violates the terms of the current ceasefire, Pakistan, acting as mediator, is pushing both sides toward compromise, including easing those U.S. naval restrictions and ensuring free shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. A Pakistani official says the current ceasefire is set to expire at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, that is 3 a.m. Thursday in Israel, unless it should be extended. In other diplomatic news, Israel and Lebanon are now slated to hold a second round of talks in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. Israel would be represented by the ambassador to the U.S., Yechiel Leiter, as the United States pushes to extend the current ceasefire. The Israeli and Lebanese representatives are set to hold talks in Washington, an Israeli source told Reuters, marking the first such discussion since a 10-day ceasefire took effect last week. The talks will be held at the State Department, with the U.S. official saying Washington welcomes productive engagement and will continue facilitating direct discussions between the two nations. Finally, there have been some serious ceasefire violations reported in South Lebanon. The IDF says the Israeli Air Force struck several Hezbollah operatives who violated the ceasefire understandings and were posing a threat to troops in southern Lebanon. And that ends this update on ILTV. Of course, continue following us throughout the day, or you could check out our app or our social media platforms. I'm Caleb Ben David, and thank you for joining us.
The United States is infiltrated by the Islamic Republic of Iran, and here is how. Welcome back to Axis of Truth. I'm Emily Schrader, and today I'm exposing how the regime is manipulating the American public through a complex network of organizations right on American soil.
For weeks on this show, I've been exposing how the media, public figures, celebrities, activists are repeating the same framing, the same talking points, the same distortions that benefit the Islamic Republic of Iran, whether or not they realize it. This is part of an immense psychological warfare effort by the regime for many decades already, and they're playing the long game. Today, I'm going to expose to you how they're doing it inside of the United States. Now, a new report from NUFTI, the National Union for Democracy in Iran, details this long-term strategy by the regime to establish durable influence and manipulation of public opinion inside the United States. Not through traditional espionage, but through institutions, religious centers, schools, nonprofits, and community organizations that operate legally, consistently, and over generations. Now, at the center of this network is the Aliyah Foundation, a New York-based nonprofit that owns a 36-story building on Fifth Avenue, a revenue-generating asset that's funded dozens of affiliated organizations across the country. Now, court filings and public reporting have described this foundation as operating under the direction of the Islamic Republic, and through that funding, it's helped build a network that spans multiple states and institutions, and one that's even shaping future generations of Americans for the worse. Now, this foundation itself has acknowledged supporting more than 35 organizations across the United States, including the Islamic Education Center in Potomac, something detailed in the report from NUFTI. Idara-e-Jafariya is what it's called in Maryland, and it's part of a broader network as well of mosques, schools, youth programs in states like Virginia, Michigan, and Texas. And that's just what's disclosed that we know about. This model is not unique to the United States either. The regime has used very similar foundations and charitable structures in the UK as well. And that's something that I will be exposing more about in detail in the future. But what you're seeing here is a strategy that adapts to different legal systems while maintaining the same objective: exporting the Islamic Revolution of 1979 to the West. Exporting the death cult of Khomeinism. Now, this NUFTI report exposes the regime's replicable model, starting with an anchor property often funded or supported through organizations like Aliyah, which provides financial stability and a permanent base. Install clerical leadership that's trained in Iran by the regime, who then sets that ideological direction. And from there, you build out schools, youth programs, and community organizations that spread the ideology into daily life and into the next generations of the West. Not just religious practice, but education, social networks, and cultural activity. And you can see this model very clearly in the Washington, D.C. area, which the report identifies as the original test case. After an attempt by pro-Khomeini activists to take over the Islamic Center of Washington in 1981, a plot which failed, their strategy shifted. So instead of direct takeovers, the network started moving towards building parallel institutions that they could control and expand over time. From there, it only spread. On American campuses, for example, the Muslim Student Association's Persian-speaking group emerged as a key node. Now, according to FBI assessments and Senate testimony, this group has operated as an extension of the Islamic Republic itself, using the cover of a campus organization to monitor dissidents and disseminate propaganda, and even organize events that promote regime-aligned ideology. These are very similar tactics to what we've seen from the Muslim Brotherhood, also in the United States on campuses. This network has been operating since the 1980s with annual conferences, organized transport of students to protest, and direct lines back to officials that are connected to the Islamic regime. Now, FBI testimony also described this network as one of the Islamic Republic's primary methods that they rely on for intelligence and technical support inside the United States, including monitoring those dissidents and advancing the regime's objectives on American soil, whatever they may be. Now, from campuses, the regime's method expands into communities. Take Maryland, for an example. In Maryland, the Islamic Education Center in Potomac was established using Aliyah Foundation support and combined a mosque with a full-time K-12 school on the same property. That structure allows the Khomeinist ideology to be reinforced daily through classrooms, peer networks, and youth programming, not strictly religious services. The center and its associated school received at least $3.6 million in funding from the Aliyah Foundation, which is what allows this model from the Islamic Republic to scale and to sustain itself over time. Now, in Virginia, this network also connects to figures like Abu Fazl Nahidian, who was involved in pro-Khomeini organizing in the U.S. for decades and whose network centers around institutions like the Manassas Mosque, as well as earlier ties to the Islamic Education Center in Potomac and Iranian student networks that operate in Washington, D.C. Now, that same ecosystem intersects with the only known Iranian-directed assassination on U.S. soil when Ali Akbar Tabataei was shot in Maryland by Daoud Salahuddin, who was connected to Nahidian's network and operated out of an Iranian student center in Washington before fleeing back to Iran, where he remains today. Now, that same Manassas Mosque that has continued along that path, as this report details, has hosted numerous events marking the Islamic Revolution, has displayed imagery associated with the regime and its leadership, and just a few weeks ago, they held a Ramadan iftar for remembrance of the now-dead terrorist leader, Ali Khamenei, who they referred to as our leader in the United States. Decades later, the regime's network has only expanded, with those mosques and others like it being funded from the same structure and public promotion of regime-aligned positions, including support for Hamas, praise for IRGC figures with American blood on their hands, and more. This is what long-term infrastructure looks like. And before some Jew-hating crank starts saying, well, what about Israel? Don't they fund schools in America? No. And that's despite the fact that Jewish schools in America are obscenely expensive. The state of Israel does not provide support or services or indoctrination, anything close to the way that this death cult of Khomeinism has and is for many decades already. And now let's take a look at Michigan. In Dearborn, roughly 40% of the population is Muslim, and actually mostly Shia. And you don't have just one institution. You have a dense ecosystem of mosques, schools, youth programs, and media initiatives that reinforce one another and really honestly normalize anti-Semitic, anti-American, and pro-terror narratives as part of daily life. For example, in 2020, following the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, a commander responsible for the deaths of hundreds of American service members, the Islamic Center of America in Michigan hosted a vigil praising him, with senior clerics crediting him with striking fear into the enemies of Islam, including the United States.
Who was this general that his presence brought hope to the marginalized and those who were afraid, and brought hatred and fear to the enemies of Islam, particularly United States?
That's an American institution publicly glorifying a man responsible for killing American soldiers. Expanding west in Texas, this model is running across multiple metro areas, including Houston and Dallas, where anchor institutions support full-time schools, youth networks, and outreach programs designed to translate that regime ideology into language that resonates with broader American audiences, including non-Muslims. And this is where the whole effort of the regime starts to connect directly to what we're seeing today on the ground. The regime is extremely effective at identifying social divisions in the West and exploiting them to their advantage, hyper-focusing on perceived grievances of the West and building bridges with radical left groups and even increasingly mainstream groups when they see the chance, such as with Israel. The IRGC and its tentacles are, quite frankly, masters at making marginalized groups feel like they have shared goals, when in fact they often have opposite goals, such as the LGBTQ movement, which suddenly promotes Palestine without understanding the only thing that Palestinians hate more than Jews, statistically speaking, according to Pew, is gays. Now, of course, we also saw it and see it today when student groups organize pro-regime protests that portray the Islamic Republic and its terror proxies as resistance, blame Jews for all the faults of the world, and sometimes even chant death to America and burn American flags, like we saw with the student anti-Israel encampments after October 7th. The Islamic Republic will attach itself to a social issue and artificially amplify the outrage over the issue, especially in media and social media, all in order to drum up dissatisfaction within American culture and society. We saw it this past month with the disproportionate outrage over a strike on an IRGC base that had a school within its perimeter where dozens of children died. Yet there is little to no public knowledge or understanding of the fact that the regime itself killed hundreds of Iranian children during protests just a number of days earlier. This week, we see it again as economic talking points dominate the conversation when people are conditioned to prioritize gas prices over human lives, which is exactly why figures like Ghalibaf are publicly trolling the United States about oil prices on social media, which the entire Iranian population is cut off from. Yeah, the internet is still off. The reality is that the regime knows what resonates and they also know what divides. And we have a major problem on American campuses. Take a look at what happened at Swarthmore campus this week.
Take another soldier out! Take another soldier out! Iran, you make us proud! Iran, you make us proud!
So students openly cheering for Hezbollah, a U.S. designated terrorist organization, and cheering for the killing of American soldiers. Really? Now, what this report from Nufti makes clear is that this isn't a handful of bad actors. It's a system deliberately built over decades across multiple states with dozens of institutions, millions of dollars in funding, and direct links back to an illegitimate terrorist regime in Iran. And this is the end result. A network that moves ideas through institutions and normalizes extremism through community structures and exploits the weaknesses of open societies to turn them against themselves. It's time to wake up and fight back against this abuse of our values as Americans or as any person who believes in freedom, equality, and liberal values. It's clear that we are under assault. And now I want to talk about an example from this week that proves exactly why what we just talked about is so critical right now. Because what we saw this week around the ceasefire between the Islamic Republic and the U.S. is not a diplomatic miscommunication. It's a real-time example of the same kind of subversion and narrative manipulation that we just talked about. When President Trump announced the ceasefire, he referenced 10 points that were under discussion for the talks. But almost immediately, the Islamic Republic leaked its own version of events to the international media, and through its media arms, a list of 10 points that were presented to the world as if they were a part of an agreed-upon deal, even though they weren't the same 10 points that were approved, and in many cases, some of these points weren't even a part of any serious negotiation between the two parties. On cue, the Western media immediately ran with it. Public figures ran with it, politicians ran with it, and suddenly you had an entire global conversation built around terms that didn't exist that made the U.S. look incredibly weak, like President Trump had failed in his war objectives. This entire effort was a psyop, and not even a sophisticated one. This was a petty attempt to stir up chaos, shift blame, and get the whole world to start condemning Israel for something that it was never even a part of. Because one of the key elements that they inserted into this fake framework was Lebanon, specifically the idea that a ceasefire somehow included limitations on Israeli action in Lebanon, despite the fact that Israel was not a party to these talks and had not been consulted on any of it. And again, last I checked, Lebanon is not in Iran. And if Iran is negotiating on behalf of Lebanon, that's not a part of the story, that's the entire problem. But once that idea was out there, everything else followed. Suddenly you have people asking, why is Israel violating terms that don't exist? You have world leaders calling for restraint based on conditions that were never agreed to. And the entire conversation shifts away from the regime and onto Israel, which is exactly what this was designed to do by the regime. The White House had to come out and clarify that these 10 points were not part of any agreed deal, and Lebanon was indeed not a part of the ceasefire. And then the regime doubled down by adding another claim in the international media about unfreezing assets, which, again, not agreed to, but by that point it almost doesn't matter because the narrative has already taken hold. The talks started, the talks failed, and now we're watching the next phase with the Strait of Hormuz. But if we don't learn from this, it'll just be the same thing all over again. And what's honestly more concerning than the regime doing this is how many world leaders just went along with it without even understanding what they're talking about. You had members of Congress and European leaders openly calling for a ceasefire in Lebanon without even knowing what the terms were, who was involved, or why there was even a conflict in Lebanon in the first place. Leaders like Keir Starmer, the Foreign Minister Yvette Cooper, Emmanuel Macron, and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres all came out demanding Israel respect a non-existent ceasefire in Lebanon because a terrorist dictatorship demands it, even though that same dictatorship doesn't govern Lebanon, doesn't represent Lebanon, and has spent decades undermining Lebanon through Hezbollah. And this is where you see the Islamic regime colonialism in action. In Lebanon, we see a system where a foreign power has inserted itself into another country through force, through proxies, and through violence, and has effectively created a parallel structure of control inside of that country. Now, they've done this in Lebanon through Hezbollah, and they've also done it in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen. And in each case, the result is the same. Weakened governments destabilize societies and populations that are caught in the middle with tens of thousands dead. Now, after doing that for decades, they expect to be treated as a legitimate stakeholder in negotiations about those same countries. And the international community is playing along. Why is the world allowing this international bully to do this? This regime has killed more Muslims over time than any other actor in the region through these proxy wars. And yet when it comes time to push back, what we see is hesitation, excuses, and leaders that are clearly more concerned with avoiding problems than with actually solving them. And the reason for that is very, very simple. Europe are cowards. They are scared of escalation, and they're scared of economic consequences. They're also scared of their own domestic politics, and in that fear, they become completely spineless. They won't even defend the Strait of Hormuz, which they depend on far more than the United States, even when the United States is willing to do it with them as the strongest military in the world. No, they prefer to scapegoat Israel by demanding Israel stand down in Lebanon. This is not just failing their own people, it's also failing the Lebanese people and international law, because the Lebanese more than ever do not want Hezbollah controlling their country. We saw that this week when Israel agreed to direct negotiations, and Hezbollah responded by threatening the government and creating so much instability that Lebanon had to back out.
ولما حكينا بالتفاوض طلع البعض قال شو جايينا من الدبلوماسية. بديله للبعض شو جايين من الحرب تبعك. صار عندنا فوق ال 1400 شهيد، فوق ال 4000 جريح، آلاف المنازل مدمرة، فوق ال1,200,000 نازح عم بيعيشوا حياة صعبة. أي أفضل كان نطول بالنا ونروح على التفاوض ولا منروح على الحرب؟ لا، التفاوض مش تنازل والدبلوماسية مش استسلام. طيب نحن ليه ما هلا بنقعد بنتفاوض لنوقف هالمآسي ونوقف هالنزف اللي عم بيعاني منه لبنان؟ لا، بدنا ننطر ليصير الوضع أسوأ بكتير وساعتها بنروح على التفاوض.
Exactly. So the Lebanese government that is willing to talk to Israel about a diplomatic solution is now being criticized by Hezbollah and threatened by Hezbollah to not do exactly that. They're lobbying against potential peace. And this is what the international community is protecting. A bullying terror proxy, actively sabotaging democracy and efforts for peace, a group that's literally threatening a coup in Lebanon. You are emboldening that? The irony here is that Israel is the only one willing to do the job of Europe and the international community for them. UN Resolution 1701 and 1559 require the disarmament of Hezbollah and require that it exist only north of the Litani River. Those resolutions have been in place for years. Billions of dollars have been spent on UN peacekeepers, UNIFIL, to enforce these resolutions, and none of it has ever worked. Hezbollah is still armed, still embedded in the south, and still operating. The Lebanese army has repeatedly proven incapable of disarming Hezbollah, so Israel must, because it's Israel who has received 6,500 missiles from Hezbollah in the past 40 days. So when Israel takes action, it's not acting outside international law. It's acting in the vacuum created by the failure to enforce international law. Instead of acknowledging that, people are accusing Israel of war crimes. This is so far beyond a policy failure. It's a civilization committing suicide. And parts of the Democratic Party, some Republicans, and much of Europe are not just failing to stop it, they're helping it along. If we don't learn from all of this, if we continue to allow the Islamic Republic to shape the terms of our debates, then the next time this happens, and there will be a next time, we will watch the exact same playbook unfold all over again. And with that, let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly from this week. Kicking things off with the bad. There is a lot of it this week, but I have to start with one person because this perfectly captures the level of ignorance we're dealing with right now. This week, I ended up arguing on X with Martina Navratilova, the tennis player, which was not really something I had on my bingo card, but here we are. And what was striking about it was not just that she is wrong, it was how confidently wrong she is while speaking on something she clearly does not understand. Because she, like so many others this week, was repeating the claim that Israel's strikes in Lebanon were war crimes and that hundreds of civilians were killed, as if that was an established fact. Except that at the time those claims were being made, there was no way for anyone, including her, to know who was a civilian and who was not, because the numbers coming out of Lebanon don't distinguish between combatants and civilians. But what we do know is that of approximately 254 people killed in those strikes, Israel's confirmed that more than 180 were Hezbollah operatives, and Hezbollah itself has been putting out martyr posters nonstop, which means you're looking at a ratio of around 70% combatants in a wave of strikes that Israel didn't start. Israel didn't start this war. That is not a war crime. But here's the real problem for people like Martina, and she's not alone in this. People are throwing around terms like war crimes based on 20-second video clips of some kind of explosion without having the most basic understanding of what actually makes something a war crime. Because you don't know who the target was, you don't know what intelligence went into that strike, you don't know what precautions were taken, you don't know whether there was advance warning. You do not know whether it was a dual-use site or a strict military objective, and in most of these cases, the people commenting don't even know how to differentiate between a legal strike and an illegal strike, which is the principles of proportionality, distinction, and a military advantage to be gained by carrying out that strike. And yet, people are making crazy legal claims with absolute certainty as a form of performative moral narcissism. And we know because the same people who are now suddenly experts in international law have been completely silent on the Islamic Republic's crimes against its own people, from mass executions to the slaughter of children to the massacre of more than 40,000 protesters. But when Israel acts against a terrorist organization, suddenly everybody's a lawyer. And that should really tell you everything that you need to know. This isn't about law or civilians. This is about people wanting to feel morally superior without actually doing the work of understanding what they're talking about. And in the process, they're not just misinforming people, they're actually reinforcing the exact narratives that the Islamic Republic is trying to push. So no, Martina, you don't get to declare something a war crime from your phone after watching a clip on social media. That's not how this works. Stick to tennis. Jihadist propaganda doesn't suit you. And now for the ugly story of this week. This is one that's kind of hard to watch, and it should be, because what we just saw in Spain is not some random protest or something done in poor taste. It's something that echoes a very long and very dark history. This week, during an Easter celebration, a giant effigy of Prime Minister Netanyahu was paraded through the streets and during this Easter celebration, and then blown up in front of a crowd that included families and children, with people cheering as it happened. And if you think that looks uncomfortably close to public execution theater, you're not imagining it, because in Spain, that kind of spectacle has a history. This is a country where in 1391, waves of pogroms swept through Jewish communities, with thousands of Jews murdered in the streets by mobs, not quietly, not hidden, but publicly and violently. A country that then created the Spanish Inquisition, where Jews and converts, so-called conversos, were hunted, tortured, and executed in public ceremonies, where people were burned alive in front of crowds. This is a country that in 1492 issued the Alhambra Decree, that expelled tens of thousands of Jews from their homes, forcing them to convert or leave under threat of death. And way before that expulsion, many were already forced into conversion through violence, massacres, and social pressure, with entire communities destroyed. So when you see a crowd gathering during a religious holiday to watch a figure representing the only Jewish state in the world be publicly destroyed, this doesn't exist in a vacuum. It looks like something that's happened there before. And it's not happening in a vacuum today either, because under Pedro Sanchez, Spain has entered a new era of Jew hatred, where anti-Israel rhetoric has bled into something much uglier. where government tone, media framing, and public discourse have really created an environment where this kind of spectacle is not only possible, but accepted. And that should make people pay attention. And now finally for the good story of this week, actually related to what I just spoke about, the U.S. government finally revoked the green cards of multiple Iranian nationals with direct ties to the Islamic regime. And some of them were arrested by federal agents and are now in ICE custody, facing deportation. Finally! Now, one of them is Saeed Issa Hashemi, who was living in the United States with his wife and child after being granted a green card through the diversity visa program. Hashemi is the son of Masume Ebtekar, better known as Screaming Mary, who was the English language spokesperson for the Iranian students who stormed the U.S. Embassy in 1979 and held 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. Now, according to the State Department, she didn't just defend the hostage takers. She actively helped produce propaganda, staging interviews where American hostages were pressured to claim that they were being treated well, while in reality they were being held in solitary confinement, blindfolded, starved, and subjected to beatings and mock executions. Now, she was the face of that crisis, going on international television, defending it, justifying it, spinning it for the world. And her son has been living in the United States freely and legally for years. The child of one of the most prominent propaganda figures from one of the most traumatic attacks on the United States in modern history, living here in the United States under a green card. Well, thanks to Marco Rubio this week, that status was terminated and he was taken into custody pending removal. And this isn't an isolated case. Days earlier, U.S. authorities also arrested Hamideh Soleimani Afshar, the niece of Qasem Soleimani, the IRGC commander responsible for the deaths of hundreds of American service members, along with her daughter after their green cards were revoked. Now, she was living in L.A., living a life of luxury, but also openly supporting the regime, even praising attacks on Americans while living on American soil. Now, as of now, this is at least the 5th case in recent weeks where individuals with ties to the Islamic Republic or its elite networks have had their statuses revoked or been blocked from entering the United States. Let's hope that this trend continues. And with that, we wrap up for this week on Axis of Truth, but we'll be back next week with more stories of what's actually happening across this region and how the war against the Islamic Republic is shaping up. As always, if there's a story you think we should be covering, you can reach out to me on social media at Emily K. Schrader or on Instagram at Emily in Tel Aviv. Otherwise, we'll see you next week here on Axis of Truth on JNS.
Deep underground in Jerusalem, in fortified operating rooms, intensive care units, and maternity wards, doctors and nurses urgently treat patients, even while rockets are flying and sirens are blaring. Hadassah built these hospitals and is working to rapidly expand these underground facilities. Additional hospital beds and 6 advanced operating rooms are urgently needed. Please go to hadassah.org. Make a gift that helps Hadassah continue its long-standing, life-changing support of the Israeli people. Thank you.
Buying real estate in Israel from abroad requires experience, trust, and the right guidance. Aliyah.il is a trusted real estate company specializing in helping international buyers navigate the Israeli property market with clarity and confidence. You will work directly with Eliyahu Kleinman, a dedicated representative of Aliyah.il, who will personally manage each step of the process, from property search to final closing, ensuring everything is handled professionally and efficiently. From Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, Ra'anana to Netanya, the right property is closer than it seems. Aliyah.il, trusted guidance every step of the way.
I've got 1 or 2 strands of gray hair. Does that mean I need to dye it before going on dates?
no.
Can I just say,
Also,
I think
like,
gray
who
hairs
knows
are
whether it's
so
gray or
hot.
blonde? You like gray hair?
I do. For sure, man. But
You know,
even
also-
like, I'll
like a
find a strand and someone said to me, she's like, should I pull it out? I was like, no, are you kidding?
She's like, I love my gray
yeah,
hair.
it's my wisdom.
There's also people that have like a little gray patch or a little
I
gray
love
streak.
it.
Yeah, it has a lot of character.
Yeah.
It makes somebody memorable. Welcome to the Jewish Matchmaker podcast on ILTV. I'm Aliyah Ben Shalom, your host, and today we are doing Q&A. All of your questions and answers we will answer for you. You can message me at Aliyah Ben Shalom on Instagram or marriagemindedmentor.com/podcast. You can submit your questions there. Today, Sarah.
That's me.
We got a few questions.
We do. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. First question comes from Tova. I've got 1 or 2 strands of gray hair. Does that mean I need to dye it before going on dates?
No.
Not dye it like lose weight, dye the hair.
No.
Can I just say,
Also,
I think
like,
gray
who
hairs
knows
are
whether it's
so
gray or
hot.
blonde? You like gray hair?
I do. For sure, man. But
You know,
even
also-
like, I'll
like a
find a strand and someone said to me, she's like, should I pull it out? I was like, no, are you kidding?
She's like, I love my gray
yeah,
hair.
it's my wisdom.
There's also people that have like a little gray patch or a little
I
gray
love
streak.
it.
Yeah, it has a lot of character.
Yeah.
It makes somebody memorable. But
And also, I feel like it shows confidence. Like, they
just
own it.
accept who they are,
Yeah,
where
they're
they
not
are.
afraid of aging. They're
Yeah.
not. It's just, I don't know. To me, there's so much self-confidence in there that it's sexy.
Yeah, definitely. Now, can I lean into something that you didn't ask about?
Yes.
So the gray hair, we're not dyeing. You can leave it. I mean, listen, if your whole head is turning gray and you're not that you don't want to own it. You own it, but you don't want it.
Yeah.
And you decide to dye your hair. So dye your hair.
There's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah, fine. But I want to talk about other things like teeth. Because that's
Yes.
a really big issue for
Yeah.
people. I had a client once, and she would not smile with her mouth open for photos, like this, mouth closed, always for photos. And I said, "Where's I need your real smile?" And she's like, "No, I don't show my teeth." I was like, "Why?" She goes, "Well, they're not straight." I said, "So?" Right? There's a lot of people in the world that don't have straight teeth.
Again, character.
Right. So she said, "Well, I don't like it." I said, "Great. You need to get braces. Fix it. Because, or Invisalign, whatever you want, you need to fix it, not for somebody else, but for you.
Yes.
Because you can't even smile for yourself.
Right.
You can't show up in the world and go, this is who I am." And she's like, "I know, but I'm not ready to deal with it." I said, "Okay, great. Great. As long as you know, fine." So if it's something that does bother you that you want to do something about, so take care of it because it's important to you, not for somebody else. You can get married with or without straight teeth, with or without gray hair. It doesn't matter. You can get married either way.
There's
you can
someone
find
for
a person.
everyone.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. But I think that it's really important for us to acknowledge that if it makes you so uncomfortable that it prevents you from genuinely smiling and showing up for real, that's a problem.
Imagine how awkward that would be on a date, trying to keep your earlobes covering your teeth all the time, just in case so you don't show any crookedness.
Well, she does. I guess. So you know what? Now that you're saying that, I'm picturing her face, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she was a little expressionless because she would keep her mouth like this. She would just move
she had Botox or lip or filler, whatever.
I don't even know what that looks like, but but she would just keep it very low. She wouldn't move it very much, and she would, and then she would make micro movements as opposed to having big expressive movements.
Right.
So it did it, and it kind of played a little bit into the personality and
For sure.
confidence. Her
For
confidence
sure.
instead of being 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 was a 3.5.
Right.
It just and everything was down because of that, and she was fabulous. There was nothing.
And just to be clear, there's nothing wrong with feeling that way. If you're not watching, you can't see, but I'm missing a tooth, and I'm literally I will only take pictures on my left side now but I'm getting it taken care of. It's going to take a while till to go
it's
the
a
whole
whole
process. But I get it. I get why it's uncomfortable.
Right.
And then do something about it.
If it makes you uncomfortable, you should take care of it.
Right. Some people don't care if they have missing teeth, and good for them.
Right.
Okay. There we go. Next question is from Rachel. How to get back into dating as a single mom after 2 failed marriages. She's so cute. I sound like one giant red flag and don't know how to disclose this before a date. The reality is I was too young when I got married the first time, then rushed into a relationship that got very serious too fast because of COVID and ended up being emotionally and physically abused.
Okay. So first of all, my heart totally goes out to her. Were you done with the question, or was there
I
more?
was done with the question. but I love her already. Like, someone who can say I sound like one giant red flag to me is not a giant red flag. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And I don't want her to go on a date or look for somebody with that feeling, because then you're going to
Correct.
find somebody who's
Correct.
a red flag. So she acknowledged it very like real and fair, which is, I was too young the first time, so I didn't know enough. I wasn't settled enough. I wasn't grounded enough. Didn't have my values in alignment. Didn't have
Which
the right
happens.
mentorship.
Yeah.
Right, and it happens. And I moved into something great. And I got out of that, and then I not rushed into it, but because
Got
of
rushed.
circumstances and timing and COVID, got rushed into something.
Which also so understandable.
And by the way, even COVID aside, there are a lot of people second time around, if you rush into it, it's same thing like dating. It's like a rebound relationship that then doesn't necessarily work. So that's not super uncommon. And I think that a piece of it she needs to own and to say, you know, I was too young and I didn't make the right decisions. Okay? I owned it. And I rushed into something in COVID and timing, and second time, I didn't make the right decisions. And this time I'd like to make the right decisions. I'd like to date longer. I'd like to date slower. I'd like to have more confidence moving ahead that this is something that's good for me and good for you and something that we can actually make work.
Right.
And I think that's really important. She has to take ownership that she has the ability to be in a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And circumstances, as it turned out, it didn't go the way that she thought it would go. And it's hard to accept that. But to own that, it's okay.
But how would you then, like, how do you bring that to the table? Because, right, I feel like someone sees that on a dating profile or...
So they usually just write, this is interesting, by the way, they usually just write divorced. Okay?
No number?
Correct. On a dating profile, it usually says divorced 1, divorced 2, divorced 3. So it doesn't. Sorry. It does not say that. So you just write divorced. So somebody knows you're divorced. And then you can have a conversation about it later. Like, and again, like, I don't really even want anybody dealing with that whole conversation. Like, I need to know if I like you before I need to know about all your history and all that. It's not as relevant as, is there something between us? Are our values in alignment? Do we have compatibility? Do we have shared visions and futures and goals? And are we in alignment? If we're not in alignment, my history doesn't even matter to you.
That's true.
So
It's true.
I would start by just getting to know somebody, and then I would just acknowledge it. You're not looking to hide something, but you're also not looking to do what I call word vomit, which is like, oh my gosh, and I was divorced twice, and this wasn't my fault, and that wasn't. And no, don't do that. Just say
divorced.
I got divorced, right? And then talk about what's relevant for now. And if there's enough of a connection, then you share more information. And you're not hiding something; you're just sharing it when it becomes relevant.
I like that.
Yeah.
One of the closest people in my life is married for a third time, and they just have the most really, I in Hebrew we say pam shlishi glida, which is like third time a charm, and I'm just like, they really got it right the third time.
I also
and
know
it's like
somebody.
the most beautiful relationship, and I'm so happy for them.
Yep. I also know a couple, and they're married for many years. They're in their, I think, 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
And it was the third time.
Wow.
And she jokes, he's the third. That's the joke. I don't want to say his name, but that's the joke between them. You know, like, you know what that is. And I was like, oh. She's like,
so
yeah, well,
funny.
that's what it was. And she had a similar story, by the way. It was like, yeah, like, just rushed.
Yeah.
Mistake.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. I kind of like this one. And that's only the first time I've said that today. I like all of them, for the record. How can a woman stay open and playful in dating while still protecting her heart and not over-investing too early? I feel like I literally want to rip that sentence apart because there's so many pieces.
Yeah. I'm like tired listening to that. I'm like, oh. So, okay, let's rip it apart. Go through the first part.
How can a woman stay open and playful in dating?
So first of all, yes, open and playful, engaging, entertaining. There should be a little bit of banter, aka flirting, something that's happening to like move the needle a little bit and try to build something between you.
And also it doesn't need to be so heavy.
No.
Like the dates themselves.
Yeah. Yes, enjoyable.
While still protecting her heart.
Protecting your heart is like, I'm not walking into this going, oh, you're my person. We're getting married. This is amazing. This is perfect. This is like, we're not having a whole conversation where my heart is like, I like you, but I don't even know you.
Right.
That's the protecting the heart. Okay. I need to know you to know how much I like you.
It's so funny because I read that, and as soon as I hear someone say protect my heart, to me it reads I have walls up. And
Who hurt you? Who hurt you?
Who hurt you, exactly. And that's understandable from someone probably did, and you are protective of your heart. But literally when I hear that, and I've noticed it in when people say it to me in dating or friends or whatever, when people talk about protecting their heart, they are usually not willing to let themselves get hurt. And if they're not willing to let themselves get hurt, they're not willing to let themselves love.
It's kind of like if you're not willing to lose, then you shouldn't play the game.
Correct.
You can't always win.
This is my thing, but I always say, like, I'd rather love and lose than not love at all. And I know but I'm comfortable with the hurt. I'd rather take the love and lose it and hurt and go through the grief.
It's a part of the process.
And even that hurt and grief and moving through it gives me so much growth. And then I become the next version of myself.
From grief to growth.
Yes. But I understand why, like, that's not everyone's mindset, but really, like,
she was hurt.
I know.
Like, right? So it's protect my heart. There's another part to that sentence, because I'm not saying it's there, right? Because I was hurt once before, because I was too open and somebody took advantage of that, and they didn't really.
So to that point, I would say, what does protection look like for you?
Great.
Do I have walls up? That's not the kind of protection we're looking for, right? What is your specific circumstance, and how have you been protecting your heart, and what can you do differently so that you still allow space for love that might come with hurt? Well, that might come with hurt, but with a balance. And what's that balance? And that's going to look different for everyone.
100%.
And not over-investing too early.
I agree.
Yeah.
I just have to see, do I like you? Also, again, the first 3 dates, the first 5 dates, is there some connection here? Do we have similarities? Do we have enough to communicate and enjoy our time together? Yes, great. Keep going. And it's not, she's probably also the type that, like, she meets people and it's like, oh, I love you.
Yeah.
I fell in love with this person. Just in a minute, I met them in an instant and we had a connection and there's something there. And then there's hopes and dreams that are built on a thought.
And those are like the most wonderful people, because I feel like those are the most connected to humans.
Right.
Like, they just like people.
Right. But then you have the possibility of... But also to reframe that hurt is a part of life. There's always, a kid falls down and they scrape their knee. So they can scrape their knee and get up and go, ow. They can cry because it really hurts. They can have to put a Band-Aid on. If it's really deep, they can put a stitch on. But, like, if it's just a scrape, like if you just skinned your knee, it's okay. So put a Band-Aid on and move on. My kids,
but even if you need a stitch, you're not going to, like, never run for the rest of your life because you once needed a stitch.
Even if you break a bone, you could still get back up. Right? So, okay, now the second part of this.
No, that was the whole thing. Now I'm going to say it one more time and you can just answer it. How can a woman stay open and playful in dating while still protecting her heart and not over-investing too early?
Don't over-invest before date 5.
Okay. What does that mean? What does not overinvest mean?
I'm not marrying you before date 5. I just want to know if I like you and if I think there's some potential here, and do I want to keep dating you? Only answer the question about us dating, not seeing a future together. And the type of dates and the things that you're doing. So go do something, do an activity, keep it light, keep it engaging, but don't make it really, really intense where you're bearing your soul on a third date, like too much. And don't date for really, like, no 5-10 hour dates. Like, I'm not interested in these crazy cockamamie long dates. It's overwhelming. It's too much. Your heart is going to get really confused.
Ooh, I feel like, wait, what's your 5-5-5-5-5-5 thing? There's a lot of fives.
It's actually right here in the book. So it is... have in mind that you're going to go out on 5 dates, no longer than 5 hours, and
preferably less.
Yes, preferably less, and no more than 5 days between dates. So, like, keep the momentum going. So go out, today, go out in 2 or 3 days, go out again in a couple days. Don't let a lot of time lag, because if I go out once this week and then once next week and then once the week after, I've invested in you for 3 weeks, but I've only seen you 3 times.
And also that is way too much time for your head to be messing with yourself.
And that's going to mess with your heart.
Right.
So pace it out in a really nice way.
Is there a limit of, like, don't see each other more than 2-3 dates a week?
Yes.
Okay.
That's it. Don't see each other 4 dates a week. Also, don't OCD text. Like, it's not like, good morning, how are you? Oh my gosh, I saw a flower and I thought of you, right? Like, just, hello, and how are you
I feel
here?
so called out right now. I see flowers and think of people.
Right. But when you're dating and you don't want to get your heart all involved, I don't need to be texting you throughout the entire day.
Right.
And we've just come to the generation where it's like, I see the 3 dots, dot, 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 they're writing, dot, 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 they're writing. What are they going to say? What are they like?
Right.
Put your phone down. Go do something else. Also, make sure you have other things going on in your life.
Yes.
So that you are
Yes,
busy
yes,
and your
yes.
thinking is going elsewhere, so that you're not obsessively thinking in this direction.
And I like, even to the point of, make sure you have like a girls' night if you're a girl, or a guy's night if you're a guy, or other things on your actual schedule, activities, so that your brain is not thinking about that, especially if you're the kind of person, I am, who's like always psychoanalyzing everything and everything that you said and how I feel and what does it mean in the future. And like, I go on one date and I'm thinking 6 months down the road. Doesn't matter if I don't know if I like the person or not.
Right.
I'm still thinking 6 months
That's
down
the
the
whole
road.
thing. Right. So keep yourself busy physically and your mind active doing other things so that you aren't caught up in the thinking and overthinking this and overinvesting your heart.
Amazing. I think we answered that.
Great.
Next question from Sarah. Is it true that men always come back?
Like after a breakup?
I guess.
No.
So I'm so curious. Who told you that, Sarah? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. It's so fascinating to me. What I've usually found is that men believe you, right? So if you say...
Way more than women believe men. We're so dumb sometimes. Aliza, I just feel like human beings are so incredibly intelligent and so dumb at the same time.
In certain areas, our heart and our head get a little confused. So I think men believe you. So if you are with somebody and you break up and you say to them, like, I don't like you, this isn't going to work, okay? And if you do or don't give them reasons, even if you just say, I don't like you, this isn't going to work, he literally will believe you and walk away, unless he's the complete opposite and then he's obsessed with you, which isn't healthy. And he's not the kind of person that you want to come back, and the one that comes back and that like fights for you and I'll do anything and then it's like literally not the human that you want. So other than that kind of a human, the other one is just going to believe you. And every time he's like, oh, maybe I should call her, his brain's going to go, she doesn't like me.
Right.
She doesn't think this can work. I guess it
Or
can't
even
work.
if she does, this reminds me of a guy I dated, and I remember getting to a point where like he was not communicating the way I wanted him to, and I was kind of like, I think I'm just going to tell him, like, if he doesn't change, then we need to like end things. And then I was like, no, because if I wanted to tell him that and for him to be like, all right, I'm going to change. And I was like, no, he's going to be like, if this is not good for you and I want what's good for you, I'm going to walk away. Right. And so I didn't say it to him because I knew he would do that.
Either it was a lose-lose. Clearly this was not your human.
It was, but exactly that. Like when you tell them, they listen. We've talked about this before, but I feel like women often, Alison Armstrong says this, women often engage with men and relate to men as if they were big, hairy women.
Right.
And so like, if I tell my girlfriend I'm fine, she knows I'm not fine.
Right.
If I tell a guy I'm fine, he's like, cool.
Oh, cool, good.
If I tell my friend, like, I don't know, I think we might need to break up because we're going through something, she'll come back and she'll have a conversation with me.
Well, she'll say,
and we'll talk about
you don't
it.
really
You don't really
think that.
I understand you're going through a lot right now. If you say that to men, he's like,
He just believes you.
Yeah.
I get and also
he's taking what you say at face value.
If he does genuinely like you and he does want to make you happy, if being with him doesn't make you happy,
he will walk away.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's the problem, that you have to show him that he can make you happy. This is why they say a happy wife, a happy life, right?
Yeah.
Because if he has the ability to make you happy, then he's going to be happy in the relationship. You're going to be happy in the relationship.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be happy in the relationship. It's going to work. But if you break up with him, he's not necessarily chasing you because he believes you.
Right.
So to the point, because I think she actually wants him to come back.
Right.
And I think actually the true point of the question is that I didn't mean to break up.
Right.
If I were to rephrase the question, I would be
assuming she's the one that broke up with him.
Yeah. Dear Aliza, I didn't mean to break up, but I kind of like did, and I pushed him away. And then like we just
want him back.
How
do
I
I
really
get
want
him
him back?
back?
Isn't he going to just come back now because like he knows like he should chase me?
No.
Right. But if you want to get him,
Which also, by the way, side note, we don't really talk about how much men don't like rejection.
No, they
And
don't
so
at all. It doesn't feel
if
good.
men think that they're going to be rejected,
They might
very
not
often
try.
they're not going to try. Very often. And that goes with like coming up to a woman to begin with, but especially after a breakup. Like, and especially if
100%
you were the
true.
one that broke up with him, he's like, why would I put myself in that position to be rejected again?
Right, exactly. So he needs to know, like, if you want to revive this, he's not coming back. But what you should do is have a thoughtful response to him that says, listen, I know we broke up. Give a reason why.
Right.
Take ownership for it. Even say, I know that I broke up with you, da-da-da. Say, I really did a lot of soul searching. I've really thought about so many things. Then give him a list of things. I value you for all of these things. And I would like the opportunity to explore this because I really see so much potential, and I think these positive things about you, and I know that whatever, if you want to say, I think I made a mistake, I think I had somebody else in my head. This happens all the time, by the way. Somebody else tells them that you should break up, and then you break up with them, and you're like, but I didn't think that. And they're like, no, but my friend, my mother, my sister, somebody thought they were bad for me or not good for me or not what I needed, but I liked them and I wanted them.
Yeah.
So just own up to whatever it is and give genuine compliments about what you genuinely like about him and say, would you be open to trying again? I would love that if you would. Like just and then leave it. And then once you send the one message, there are no more messages to be sent. Should I say that again? There are no more messages to be sent. Let it be. And you should know that they may actually come back to you in an hour, in a week, in a month. It could be a year. I don't know what it is. They will come back when they are ready to come back, or if they are ready to come back. And if they don't, they don't. So even though you open the door to a maybe, so some people are like, yeah, but if they don't get back to me this week, like, forget it. That's it. It's done. I changed my mind. I'm like, no. It doesn't work that way. You open the door, you leave it open. If they respond, you can respond. You're not sitting around waiting for them. But this person, you want to try with them, you better wait for their timing now.
Especially if you were the one that broke up with him.
Yeah.
You don't get to say, like, I broke up with them. I'm ready to take them back. No, they have 24 to 48 hours to respond.
no
You know what I mean?
ultimatum.
Like, that's not how that works. Yeah, I know we just have a couple minutes left, but on the topic of exes, can you share with us what is a good enough reason to get back together with an ex?
Well, when it didn't end with a good enough reason. That's the short answer, right? Like
Okay.
I make this rule all of my brilliant things that I come up with that I work so hard to combine all the information. It's in this book. You should grab it.
Is it in the book?
It's on Amazon. It's called Matchmaker. Matchmaker, Find Me a Love That Lasts. So there's a chapter all about convince me why you're breaking up.
Yeah.
Me. Convince me, Aliza, why you are breaking up with this person. And if you don't have a good enough reason, today is not the day to break up. You may break up. But today, we're not breaking up.
Right.
So I think that
If you didn't convince Aliza and broke up,
right, so
and it wasn't a good enough reason.
No, so now I would ask yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like have that dialogue in your head.
Yeah.
Why did I break up? Was that a real reason to break up? Was it a values-based reason? Do we have not have enough alignment? Are we triggering each other too much? Do we have too many highs and too many lows? I love you, you love me, but I can't live with you. I love you, but I can't live with you, right? That is really a very big statement, and you have to own that. So if I love you, but I can't live with you, forget it. This is over. You shouldn't get back together. But if I broke up with you because we had a fight and we didn't resolve it well, okay, that's communication. That's, picking yourself up when you fall. Did that happen once or that happened 10 times? If that happened once and you had a mood and something happened and it was bad timing, okay, so then you might need to get back together. I've seen a lot of couples, and this is why I call mystery in your history, this thing where you look back into previous relationships or missed opportunities. I think that that's something that's really important for us to do and not just throw a relationship away. But if there's a deal breaker, I've broken people up. I'm like, you're toxic together. This isn't going to work.
Right. Does it make a difference if I'm the one that broke up with them or they broke up with me, or it's the same deal either way?
Well, if I broke up with them, then I'll know if it's okay for us to get back together. If they broke up with me, maybe I know the real reason, maybe I don't.
No, but let's say they broke up with me and then they came back.
So we need to see what
same process.
Yeah, same process.
Basically.
What was the reason,
Okay.
and is this something that can work or not?
All right.
Okay, fantastic. It's been a pleasure to be with you. If you have questions, you should submit them to me at Aliza Ben Shalom on Instagram, or marriagemindedmentor.com/podcasts. I would love to hear from you about anything dating, love, relationships, marriage. Make sure to follow me too. And until next time, remember that matches make families, families make communities, and communities change the world.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. I'm Caleb Ben David, coming to you live from Israel with all of the biggest stories from here and across the region. Here are the latest developments. Today, Israel is marking Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day, remembering and honoring those who have fallen in service or were killed in terror attacks. In total, Israel is commemorating 25,648 fallen soldiers, police, and security personnel, including those who defended the Zionist enterprise going back to 1860. A 1-minute siren sounded across Israel last night at 8 p.m., marking the start of Memorial Day. The siren was followed by an official state ceremony at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, attended by President Isaac Herzog, Defense Minister Israel Katz, and IDF Chief of Staff Yael Zamir. A 2-minute siren sounded at 11 a.m. this morning, bringing the nation to a standstill, followed by a memorial ceremony at the Mount Herzl Cemetery. And today the names of the fallen have been read out loud at the Hall of Remembrance at Mount Herzl. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also spoke there, remembering his own brother, Yoni Netanyahu, who was killed during the Entebbe rescue operation in 1976.
בהר המקודש הזה, הר הרצל, טמונים דורות של גיבורים וגיבורות. הפצע עמוק מן הזמן. הזמן חולף, אבל הכאב אינו חולף אף פעם. אני עצמי מרגיש זאת בכל תא מתאי גופי. אחי יוני שטמון פה נפל לפני 50 שנה.
A total of 174 members of Israel's security forces were killed during their service since last Memorial Day, and that includes 2 soldiers who were killed just over this past weekend by Hezbollah explosive devices in South Lebanon. Another 54 veterans died from complications from injuries sustained during their service over the past year. May all of their memories be a blessing. And Memorial Day will conclude this evening at 8 p.m. local time, at which point Israel shifts immediately into celebrating its 78th Independence Day. And only a day before the U.S.-Iran ceasefire is due to expire, plenty of questions still surround a second round of U.S.-Iran talks in Islamabad. Pakistani sources claim that both delegations have confirmed their participation, though some uncertainty remains, as Iranian sources say their negotiating team has not yet confirmed travel plans. President Trump told Fox News a U.S. delegation led by Vice President J.D. Vance is set to depart for Iran. Trump dismissed concerns the talks could collapse, saying, quote, "Nobody's playing games," while reiterating that Iran must abandon any nuclear ambitions, warning that if talks fail, it wouldn't be pretty. A senior Iranian official said Tehran is considering participation in the talks, but its lead negotiator, Mohammad Bakir Kalibaf, would not take part unless Vice President Vance is also in attendance. Kalibaf also said in a statement, "We do not accept negotiations under the shadow of threats, and over the past 2 weeks, we have prepared to unveil new cards on the battlefield." While tensions persist over the U.S. naval blockade, which Iran says violates the terms of the current ceasefire, Pakistan, acting as a mediator, is pushing both sides toward compromise, including suggesting easing U.S. naval restrictions and ensuring free shipping through the Strait of Hormuz as this ceasefire deadline approaches. And in other peace talks, Israel and Lebanon are now slated to hold a second round of their negotiations in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. Israel will again be represented by Ambassador to the U.S. Lechi Leiter as the U.S. pushes to extend the current ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. The Israeli and Lebanese representatives are set to hold the talks in Washington again, with an Israeli source telling Reuters this will be the first discussion since the 10-day ceasefire took effect last week. The talks will be held again at the State Department, with the U.S. officials saying Washington welcomes productive engagement and will continue to facilitate direct discussions between the two nations. Now, all this comes amid some serious ceasefire violations reported in South Lebanon. The IDF says the Israeli Air Force struck several Hezbollah operatives who violated the ceasefire understandings and were posing a threat to troops in South Lebanon. In two separate incidents, paratroopers and Golani troops spotted Hezbollah operatives in the Binchbel area and near the Litani River, both in areas the IDF says are within its security zone. The IDF says the operatives approached their forces in a manner that posed an immediate threat and were later struck and eliminated in precision airstrikes. And let's turn now towards Gaza and the fragile ceasefire in place there. The IDF says two Hamas operatives who were posing an immediate threat were killed in separate strikes in the Gaza Strip over the past day. The first strike in central Gaza yesterday killed Ayman Husna, a Hamas operative, who the IDF says was involved in manufacturing and preparing weapons for the terror group. The second strike, carried out earlier today, killed Anas Khaled Safi, a Hamas operative the IDF says was planning an imminent attack on troops. Quote, both terrorists posed an immediate threat to the troops and were eliminated in precision airstrikes, according to the IDF. Meanwhile, Hamas has also reportedly clashed with an Israeli-backed militia group in Gaza. Residents there say members of the Israeli-backed militia operating in an area under IDF control clashed with Palestinian fighters after crossing into a Hamas-run area east of Khan Yunis. A Hamas fighter reportedly fired an anti-tank grenade toward their vehicle. An explosion was heard, but there was no word about casualties. There was no comment from either Hamas, which brands such groups as Israeli collaborators, or the militia about this incident. Now, the emergence of these militia groups, though they still remain small and localized, has added to the pressures on Hamas. The renewed violence comes as the envoy for the U.S.-backed Board of Peace for Gaza says a plan to disarm Hamas must be placed within days or weeks. Hamas's disarmament remains a sticking point in talks to implement President Trump's plan for the Palestinian enclave and cement an October ceasefire that halted 2 years of full-blown war. Nikolai Mladenev, envoy for the Board of Peace, says he is fairly optimistic a plan for disarmament of Hamas and other militant groups in Gaza can be agreed upon, but caution that will still take time.
We've had some very serious discussions with Hamas over the last few weeks. They're not easy. They demand very significant decisions to be taken by all sides. But I'm fairly optimistic that we will be able to come up with an arrangement that works for all sides and most importantly works for the people in Gaza. I do not think we have months. We have a matter of days, maximum a couple of weeks. That is my assessment, because otherwise we will lose the momentum of what we have, and then every decision will become even more difficult than it is now. And the risk of something happening on the ground that upsets this whole process increases by the day.
And finally, Argentina's president, Javier Milei, was visiting here this week, was awarded the Presidential Medal of Honor by President Herzog for his support for Israel. The medal, received by Milei in a ceremony at the president's official residence in Jerusalem, Herzog there said it was awarded in recognition of Milei's consistent and outspoken commitment to the State of Israel, his unwavering support for the Jewish state on the international stage, his solidarity with the families of the formerly Hamas-held Gaza hostages, and his deep personal connection to the Jewish people and its heritage. Milei welcomed the increasingly closer ties between our peoples, the strengthening of this friendship, which has been one of the pillars of our government's foreign policy, as part of a return to the Judeo-Christian values that once made us great. Here are both men.
You, Javier, in your actions and in words, demonstrated your friendship and declared your message of showing up in body, spirit, and heart. It is therefore my esteemed honor to stand here as President of the State of Israel in its 78th year and decorate you with the Israeli Presidential Medal of Honor. This is a symbol of our gratitude and appreciation to you.
Que la amistad entre Argentina e Israel perdure en el tiempo, primero por lo que representa para dos pueblos que comparten valores, un legado y una visión de futuro, pero sobre todo como un símbolo de que aún en los tiempos más oscuros el bien termina prevaleciendo, siempre y cuando permanezcamos unidos. Que Dios bendiga a Israel, que Dios bendiga a la República Argentina, que las fuerzas del cielo nos acompañen. Muchísimas gracias a todos.
President Milei will tonight be one of the torchlighters in the official opening ceremony for Israel's Independence Day celebration in Jerusalem. That is an honor that is rarely bestowed on foreign figures. Well, joining us now for more on several of these topics are Khosrow Isfahani, the research director for the National Union of Democracy in Iran. And also joining us from Washington is Ron Campius. He is the former bureau chief there for JTA, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Khosrow, if I could start with you. A lot of uncertainty, as I said, about these talks in Islamabad. The Iranians giving sort of contradictory signals about whether they're going to take part, even though Pakistan seems to believe they are. What is Iran's game here? What are they playing at?
They are playing exactly the same game that they have been playing for the past 5 decades. The Islamic Republic, whenever it faces internal or external threat, it acts as a single monolith. It unifies, it fights back, it crushes the adversary at home, usually very brutally when it's protests, and fights the adversary outside with whatever means it has, from bombs to missiles to militias to terror groups to whatever you name it. But whenever it comes to diplomacy, whenever it comes to engaging foreign powers, it projects this image of good cop, bad cop. There is a faction within the Islamic Republic that one time it's called reformists, another time it's called moderates, pragmatists. The list of recycled titles for this group is going on and on and on. And then you have the hardliners. Right now it's the crazy, scary IRGC. But it's a unified monolith that projects division within its ranks when it goes to negotiations. What's the outcome of it? The negotiating team of the Islamic Republic will sit down in Islamabad with U.S. negotiators, continue fighting among themselves, apparently even putting up a show for the Pakistani intermediaries, and tell them that if you don't give us any concessions, the crazies back home are going to kill us and upend the whole prospect of making a deal. That's a whole show for the world. We are dealing with a death cult that has taken Iran hostage for the past 5 decades, that has taken the whole world hostage for the past 5 decades, killed tens of thousands of people inside and outside Iran, and is going to keep doing so unless it's stopped in its track full force. It's absolute annihilation or total humiliating surrender. Anything in between for the Islamic Republic will give it a chance to survive, to continue. And you're dealing with a regime that has been designed to sustain itself through crises, to grow because of crises. Every crisis that has been thrown at this regime and not ended the job, the regime has come out of it stronger.
All right. Well, Ron, as President Trump said, nobody's playing games here, but as we just heard from Khosrow, Iran is playing its old games, at the very least stalling for more time, or and the most trying to gain these concessions. How is President Trump likely to react? He certainly seems like he wants a deal, or perhaps to keep this ceasefire going. How likely is that?
Well, there's a sign that he does. Yeah, you're absolutely right. He wants to keep the ceasefire going because the deadline was supposedly today, Tuesday, and now I think he told maybe Fox, some news outlet, that he sees the deadline as tomorrow night. So he's looking for a way out. But the innovation with Trump in office is that at least for the first time since Nixon, you have a president who's also ready to play the crazy game in terms of seeking to leverage an outcome. And so he had that he had that threat to destroy Iranian civilization, which people here, or people who support Trump here, credit with getting the Iranians to the table in the first place. He maybe will make another such threat. He's talked about hitting Iranian infrastructure. We'll see how far he goes to try and get the Iranians to make the concessions he wants.
Right. And Khosrow, let's talk about possible concessions. I mean, you could see kind of the outline, according to reports, some outline emerging, not a forever freeze on enrichment, but maybe something in the area of 10 to 15 years, moving that enriched uranium to a third party. Now, suddenly Pakistan, in the last couple of days, has come out in the sort of equation as a possible destination for it, something I think not everybody in Israel would be, or certainly India wouldn't be comfortable with. How likely that the regime would agree to even those kind of concessions, which it has been reluctant to make, certainly in the past?
On the Pakistan note that you made, a friend the other day was joking when Osama bin Laden was taken out in Abbottabad. The soldiers were shouting Geronimo. If this horrible deal is signed in Islamabad, the Islamic Republic should start shouting Abbottabad in celebration. That's where we are with this regime. Yes, they might make concessions on nuclear enrichment. They did the same thing under Obama. What was the whole point of the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign, the military operation, to get back to where Obama was? That would be ridiculous. That would harm U.S. national interests long term. It would be a significant historic mistake. We have received a once in many generations chance to end the Islamic Republic. And look at the other concessions that might cross the table in future. A limit on the missile program? Yes, sure. They would agree to limit their missile range to the 2,000 kilometer that they previously had told the world is the limit, which they were violating. And even if they don't violate it, they would be able to strike Israel. They would be able to strike every GCC country. 80% of projectiles sourcing from Iran didn't go after Israel or the United States. They were targeting Arab states to create enough economic chaos around the world to force U.S. president into submission. That's the Islamic Republic's long-term game. They weren't using sophisticated missiles. They weren't using sophisticated drones. They were using their cheapest, simplest drones and missiles to hit the GCC countries, and that strategy has worked. It has forced the United States to come to the negotiating table. That's point one. Point two, the issue that suddenly everyone has forgotten about this negotiations. It used to be the hot topic, the Strait of Hormuz. Ghalibaf, the parliament speaker who is leading the negotiations, last week did a whole 1 hour long TV announcement saying that we are not going to relent control over Hormuz. This is the Islamic Republic's actual leverage in the face of the whole world. We are dealing with a regime that is built around endurance. The core ideology, the core strategy of this regime is enduring crises, surviving it until they can expand more and more. They have done it again and again. One last tidbit. Back in the day when I was working in Iran, at some point I infiltrated an IRGC intelligence organization's network. And one of the officers in that network turned to me during a conversation and asked me, "Do you know how to boil a frog?" If you throw the frog into boiling water, it will try to jump out. If you place the frog in a bath of lukewarm water and gradually increase the temperature, the frog will die before it understands what threat it's facing. The world has been oblivious to the Islamic Republic's threats constantly, apparently, and the temperature is rising constantly.
Right. Well, you heard around the temperature is rising. Now, you said President Trump is willing to play the crazy card. We certainly know he is willing to use military force, but we are coming close to that sort of 4 to 6 week deadline that he originally set out, 6 weeks or 2 months. And there were some in Congress who have said, well, he certainly can have at least 2 months because the War Powers Act doesn't come into force or shouldn't be discussed until at least 60 days after the start of any military action. How much political backing, even within his own party and his own base, would President Trump have if he decides that he's got to return back to military force against Iran?
I mean, Trump is like one of the most impressive presidents in terms of combating the loyalty of his party. I think that until now, at least, Republicans have been very wary of defying him openly. They kind of consign themselves to a wilderness if they do so. On the other hand, this war is incredibly unpopular. The idea of boots on the ground is still incredibly unpopular here. If that's what he wants to go ahead and do. You even have you had a cabinet secretary the other day saying that Americans might have to endure gasoline prices around $4 until 2027. So I think they're looking into a kind of a long haul. It indicates that they're looking into a long haul standoff. And you have midterm elections in November. I mean, Trump has said that if the Democrats win the House, there goes his term. He gets, it's just going to be impeachment inquiry after impeachment inquiry for the final 2 years of his terms. And I think he's going to be very sensitive to that. The people who are running are very sensitive to that. There might not be open defiance of Trump among Republicans in Congress, but I think there are going to be pressures on him. I think Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, is going to be making private calls to him, asking him for an exit ramp, as long as this war remains unpopular and its effect on the economy remains deleterious.
Right. José, let me go back to, you mentioned the possibility of Iran at least appearing to make concessions on the nuclear issue, even on the missile program. There is another issue, of course, of great concern to Israel, which is now involved in these talks with Lebanon, and that is Iranian support for its terror proxies, in particular Hezbollah. How much, if any, flexibility, even if on the surface of it, you think the regime willing to make in that on that issue?
I would say zero. Even if they agree to make any concessions on paper, we are dealing with a regime that is well versed in sanctions evasion and money laundering. They are not going to open their books. You are not going to see where the money comes and goes from. They are good with drug dealers. They are good with smugglers, every type of way that you can imagine for this regime to get weapons and money into the hands of its terrorist network across the Middle East. They are going to keep using it. One quick point on the last question about how the Americans perceive this war. One of the things that I moved to the United States around 2 years ago, something that I have constantly found mind-boggling, is how much many Americans hate the guts of this great nation. A nation that has brought so much good to the world. They don't see it. They don't respect the flag that men and women in uniform are dying for. They are not seeing the freedoms that this nation has granted them. And it hurts more because my nation, Iranians, have been on the streets fighting for a shred of dignity and freedom that Americans take for granted here. That's the saddest part about how the general public reacts to Trump's behaviors. Yes, you can be critical of this president and his policies and whatever, but what he has done in reaction to the Islamic Republic has been what the United States should have done 5 decades ago. This is an existential threat to the world. Look at other adversaries that the U.S. is facing. Look at China and Russia. The threat is strategic and it's urgent, but it's not lethal. You don't expect Russians and Chinese to go out of their way and kill Americans tomorrow. With terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, yes, the threat is urgent and lethal. They are killing people around the world, but they are not going to take the world economy hostage tomorrow, disrupt the flow of oil and goods around the world. With the Islamic Republic, the threat is strategic, urgent, and lethal. They are killing Americans, they are killing Europeans, taking them hostage, disrupting the world economy, firing missiles at literally every US ally in the region non-stop. This regime got to go, and the president, if he does that, good on him. He will go down in history as the president who finished the job finally.
All right. Well, you know what? Picking up on a little bit on Khosrow's comment about Americans not valuing, in some degree, their own country. Today is, or this evening, will begin Israel's 78th Independence Day, Ron. I want to ask you about, and as myself, born and raised in the U.S. in the Jewish community, I know the pride that community taken in Israel and even among many non-Jewish Americans. Of course, I myself have marched in that Israel Independence Day Day parade in Fifth Avenue. This year, the atmosphere is a little different, or a lot different, in the U.S., and I want to get a sense of you and a temperature as Israel celebrates its 78th day of independence here. How many in the U.S. are celebrating Israel?
I think more than you would think. If you're just looking at the chattering classes, there's just a lot of talk online about Jews feeling alienated from Israel. I think the Times or another outlet did a story on anti-Zionist synagogues. I think the representation is actually pretty low. I mean, I live in a very liberal enclave in Northern Virginia, and my synagogue is planning Yom Ha'atzmaut celebration. So, there's that. And I think that's true about...
I'm just going to say, I presume with tighter security than in past years, Ron.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's like not just for Yom Ha'atzmaut, for everything. So, I'm talking about Jewish support. Sure. Jewish for Israel remains strong. I think that, there's this chorus. It's interesting. You get this unity sometimes from the far left and the far right, where they say, "Oh, it's not about Bibi. If Bibi goes, then there'll still be an growing anti-Israel sentiment among liberals." I think at least among Jews, American Jews, Netanyahu, his government, Smotrich, and Ben Gvir are considered a big part of the problem. I think that they're looking forward to a day where they can more robustly support an Israeli government that's not led by, even if it's led by a right-winger, that isn't led by this particular cohort. So I think that's going on. But yes, you're right. There's just a lot of anxiety around here. You get the statements after near tragedies like you had in Michigan last month when somebody attempted to explode a synagogue while the 140 preschoolers were present. You get the statements of solidarity, you get the statements of determination. But I think you get people who are also worried. I'd like to know how many kids, how many parents have withdrawn their kids from that school since then. It's a constant undercurrent of worry.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that. But Khosrow Isfahani and Ron Campius, thank you for joining us on ILTV.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now let's listen to a brief message.
Buying real estate in Israel from abroad requires experience, trust, and the right guidance. Aliyah.il is a trusted real estate company specializing in helping international buyers navigate the Israeli property market with clarity and confidence. You will work directly with Eliyahu Kleinman, a dedicated representative of Aliyah.il, who will personally manage each step of the process, from property search to final closing, ensuring everything is handled professionally and efficiently. From Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, Ra'anana to Netanya, the right property is closer than it seems. Aliyah.il, trusted guidance every step of the way.
And let me just tell our viewers that this evening, our normal, regular daily news broadcast in the evening will run an hour earlier. That's at 7 p.m. Israel local time instead of 8 p.m. because at 8 p.m. local Israel time, we will be bringing you live the opening ceremony that I mentioned of Israel's 78th Independence Day. And on that note, let me wish our viewers a happy Independence Day, whether you're in Israel, still cause to celebrate, whether you're here or also abroad. That ends this broadcast on ILTV. I'm Caleb Ben David, and thank you for joining.
At the end of the day, we're fighting the same devil, this terrorist organization or this terrorist ideology that doesn't want to see us alive and wants to control us, and at the end of the day wants to control every aspect of life that we have.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Off the Record. There's a lot happening right now, and a lot of it isn't being explained properly. Things are getting reduced, misrepresented, or just ignored altogether. This is a place where we hope to slow things down, take a step back, and break the information down properly and get into what actually matters. I'm your host, Zina Rachamilova. Let's get into it. Over the weekend, Israel and Hezbollah agreed to a 10-day ceasefire brokered by the United States, meant to pause several weeks of intense cross-border fighting. But inside Israel, this has triggered confusion and, in many cases, real anger. There is a growing perception that Israel's security decisions are not being made by Jerusalem, but influenced, if not dictated, by Washington, and more specifically by President Donald Trump, who is operating with his own strategic interests in mind. Nowhere is this tension felt more than in northern Israel.